I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, February 11, 2020. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll and establish a quorum?
Supervisors Frost.
Here.
Natoli.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Cerna.
Here.
And you have a quorum.
Thank you.
This meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T UVerse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and is webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated Friday, February 14th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. This meeting is also broadcast live on KUBU Radio on 96.5 FM. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any local library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker slip and hand it to staff. When the chair calls your name, please come to the podium, and also please silence your electronic devices at this time.
Great, thank you. Flo, will you do us the honor of leading us in the pledge this morning?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, again, as a friendly reminder, we do welcome everyone here in chambers, and should you choose to address the board, you're also welcome to do that. We do have personnel in the back of chambers to assist folks in completing our speaker slips. As chair, I would respectfully ask that you please print clearly your name so I can do my best to appropriately pronounce your last names. And I also just want to add, we respectfully ask that you refrain from the use of profanity at the podium. We certainly understand your First Amendment rights to free speech in these chambers, but just as, again, a friendly reminder, this proceeding is broadcast live and it is taped so that folks at home can view their county government at work. And many of those watching oftentimes are young people, and so we would ask that you please do your best to use appropriate language when addressing the board. So with that, our first item, please.
Okay, for your consent matters, items 1 through 34. For item number 8, you're adopting an ordinance to revise Title II, Chapter 2.56, Section 2.56.420 of the Sacramento County Code relating to the Procurement Opportunities Program, Small and Micro Business Enterprise Definitions. You waived reading on this on January 28th. You're also introducing an ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2.15 of the Sacramento County Code relating to delegation of county health officer authority to the Director of the Environmental Management Department with respect to environmentally based public health programs. This will be waived, and you'll waive reading and adopt on February 25th. For item 27, you're adopting introducing two ordinances, repealing and reenacting county building codes contained in code chapters 16.02, 04, 10, 16.20, and then 16.22 through .24, 16.28, .32, .34, 16.36 through .39, and 16.90. You're also adding 16.41 through .43 and deleting 16.08 and 4.58. You're introducing ordinance repealing and reenacting County Fire Prevention Code contained in Chapter 17.04, waiving reading on both ordinances and continuing to February 25th for adoption. And that concludes the clerk's notes.
I think relative to item 27, Madam Clerk, I think you missed 16.20, believe it or not.
So,
Oh, he was listening.
I was actually listening, so.
sorry about that, and I have
worries.
that in my notes.
Okay, thank you. Any member of the board wish to pull an item from consent? We do have a speaker on item 3, so we'll hear that separately. Mr. Tully?
Yes, in addition to item 3, I'd like to pull items 9, 27, and 29, please.
Okay, so 3, 9, 27, and 29. Item 3, authority to apply for and accept $6,068,928,000 in homelessness housing assistance and prevention program funding to expand Sacramento County initiatives to reduce homelessness.
Okay, Mr. Erlenbush?
Good morning, Bob Erlenbush. I'm the Executive Director of the Sacramento Regional Coalition to End Homelessness. About a month ago, the Environmental Coalition for Clean Water, EJCW, we created what we are calling the Homeless Environmental Justice Alliance. Because in talking to neighborhood associations, business, the PBIDs, the interfaith community, environmental advocates, etc., we found a common agenda that people across the board, whether it was business organizations or homeless organizations, wanted common sense solutions to sanitation issues of homeless people. Pretty obvious, I'm sure you could come up with them in 2 seconds as well. Open up bathrooms, especially on the city side and places where homeless people are. Mobile showers and bathrooms, which we were calling our homeless employment sanitation. In other words, you would hire homeless people to do outreach and have a mobile shower and bathroom program for people experiencing homelessness, particularly in encampments. Hand sanitizing stations around town, pretty obvious, as well as routine trash pickup at homeless encampments, where again you could employ homeless people. And you've already funded a couple of those. You funded the bathrooms in North A for which are used about. Now, those are not unduplicated counts. On average, between 6,000 and 8,000 uses in North A, about 12 hours a day, as well as the Pride program to hire 40 homeless people. So you've got some precedents to do what we're suggesting. I did contact Sacramento Steps Forward. After our original proposal that they sent you last week, we were just across the board saying, let's take $1 million from the city, $1 million from the county, and $1 million from the COC. But after meeting with Lisa Bates, we didn't think that that was equitable, because the city is getting $15 million, approximately $13 to $15 million, compared to only the $6 million for the county and for the COC. So yesterday I sent you a revised idea that tonight at City Council we're going to be asking for $2 million from the city, which is about 14%. We scaled back our ask of the Board of Supervisors to only $500,000, which is only 8%. So 92% can be used for what you've already seen from Cindy Kavanaugh, and the COC tomorrow will be asking for $500,000. We looked at the FAQs and the promising and evidence-based practices supplied by the California Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council, and our ideas fit. Our ideas fit in terms of outreach, in terms of innovative access to job programs, in terms of being an evidence-based practice, as well as finally increasing income for people experiencing homelessness. So I'm happy to answer any questions about our proposal, but obviously we support the proposal from Cindy Kavanaugh's office, but at the same time we'd like to see $500,000 carved out for our homeless employment sanitation program.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Any questions for the speaker?
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Peters.
Erlickson, Aaron Bush, did you attend the December 11th and January 29th community meetings to discuss the priorities for this funding?
I was out of town on the 11th. I did go to the HAP meeting. I did go to the meeting in just a few weeks, about 2 weeks ago, I think, or 10 days ago, and presented the same idea. At our breakout table, we had 25 people where there was consensus that we wanted a sanitation program. That didn't come out in the recommendations, but nevertheless, it did at our table. And quite frankly, in the room in general, I think was attended probably about 40 or 50 people.
Okay, thank you, but it wasn't one of the recommendations of overall recommendations.
Unfortunately, and this is just my opinion, and several of us felt that that community meeting was a check-the-box exercise, that I challenged the conveners saying, you know, we're showing up to a community meeting, you want our ideas, we're putting ideas on the table, but at the same time, 90% of the funds have already been decided by the COC, by the city and the county, and they were only leaving the COC with the innovation part, which was where our idea would come under. So just to finish a point, they've made a point about having collective investment from the city and county and the COC, and this is the opportunity to share that common investment.
Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Natoli?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a couple questions of staff. I appreciate Bob's comments here and received the written correspondence as we all did, but a couple of things that I wanted to ask about as relates to this, and my understanding is that this application is due on Saturday. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we have to take action today, as I understand it. So, Bruce, for either you or Cindy, two different related topics. One being as it relates to the attachment that we received that basically outlines where we want to put the dollars. I guess I want to understand on the, as at least a staff recommendation at this point, the emergency shelter for families. Yeah, I trust that most people saw the article on Sunday in the Bee, and again, that's emblematic and representative of, I'm sure, many different situations that are similar. And if I look at the report we get monthly from Ann Edwards relative to what we're doing with the homeless initiative that this board adopted, and the Family Emergency Shelter Program, which is now operated by Next Move and was previously by Volunteers of America out at Mather. We had, I guess a few dozen slots that were available for families there. This current recommendation, attachment 1, talks about then a HEAP family shelter, 21 beds, 7 families. I guess my question is that, and we've had debate in these chambers in recent years relative to other programs that have, been focused on families, particularly those with children. And when I read that article on Sunday, and yes, we vouchered this lady in, and then she was back living in her car. And I guess, Cindy, my question is that with the priorities that are outlined here and what we're doing for families, but we provide housing for 33 families in the one program. I think that was the targeted number at Mather. And we're going to get 7 more families with this money. But where are we in the picture here? I mean, when you think about 40 or 50 families and you think about the need out there, and it was represented in that article, it can't help but break somebody's heart, not situations that we all hear about. You hear about probably more of them. But I guess I want to know with what we're doing here, families, there's only 7 families that are going to be served under this money for the next basically 3 years?
So that is the bed capacity. Good morning, Cindy Cavanaugh, County Director of Homeless Initiatives. With the HEAP funding, we expanded shelters very quickly in existing programs. Keep in mind, this is one-time money, so starting something new is not really feasible. But we created within the existing programs, we expanded all of the shelters, including North A, family shelters, and the scattered site shelters. It is 21 beds within the existing facilities. That's approximately 7 families at a time. To the extent we are improving how we are rehousing folks, there is flow through the shelters. So I would say, while it may not be on par with the need, and we need to continue to look at solutions to family homelessness, including how we're using the CalWorks Housing Support Program to rehouse folks and the other kinds of assistance we have to rehouse folks, we will be serving multiple iterations of families through the family shelter expansion. We'll extend it for 2 years with this funding.
Okay, so what is it, recognizing that there is a movement or a flow through the system, what are the number of families that we basically have funding for? And again, that can fluctuate depending upon number of beds and the size of families. Is it 40 only?
I don't have that in front of me, and I'm seeing if anyone from DHA to know the full family capacity. I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Okay.
I can get back to you, or?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to the point here because this application, and again, obviously we've spent some time looking at what we have in our current system. But if I read the article correctly, and certainly I understand the discussion around the point in time count, which is fairly recent information, but we're showing this significant number because of, I think, a more accurate count of folks living in their cars, families. I guess I'd like to have some discussion before we leave this item today and send this application forward, because basically we're going to take this money and freeze the funding to any other requests we may have. We kind of moved away with some of our discussions 2 years ago at this time, in looking at the chronically, and those are the most frequent users and so forth. Okay, we've identified, we've enrolled a lot of those folks in housing. I'd like to have the conversation, and I think, I know I asked, and maybe other members of this board, I believe, at the time to have a follow-on discussion about children and families, where they fit in this equation. And it seems to me that, you know, we have a very modest boost here, but I don't know that it reflects the need that's out there and the ability to address that need. So that's why I'm asking what that number is. You know, what's our capacity right now for families, besides vouchering? Because as I read that, and I think it's clear to me that that's very temporal, and it, you know, and I'll just use the case example that was headlined in Sunday's Bee. And that was, you had a lady with a toddler and a 3-year-old who was vouchered in a hotel, motel for 2 or 3, 4 days, and then was living back in her car. Something's wrong with that picture. It's the middle of winter, and we got a mother with 2 young children that's living in her car. She is only one of many, I'm sure. And again, with low barrier, you know, she remarked, her comment was she was not going to go to one of those shelters because, you know, again, she didn't have an addiction, at least as she, you know, portrayed in that article. So I guess I want to know a little more about it before. This is $6 million that we're going to be distributing over the next couple of years. And before we take action on this day, I'd like to have a little better understanding where we sit with families in this county, and not only what we're doing and what we've done, which is good work, but I want to have a little more, because I'm not prepared to move on this. I don't want to lose the money, but I want to, you know, have this conversation here at the dais today.
Right. So Supervisor,
Yeah.
we have that information being collected as we speak, and so it should be here very soon from DHA. One point to emphasize, as Cindy mentioned, as we work with the community and the city and Sacramento steps forward, this particular pot is one-time funding. The question before the community was how best to collaboratively use our one-time funding here. It's not represent the entire effort that we have for families.
Right.
So we'll get that information.
And on that point, I would add that the youth investments are viewed collectively across the 3 entities. The city and the COC are investing in expanding youth sheltering, which includes families. In fact, a large portion of the youth do have children. We are partnering in that in doing the prevention and rehousing associated with those youth investments, as well as looking at our existing youth investments through general fund. So that is another aspect. What's not included, and I hope is included when it's collected, is the family housing at Mather Community Campus as well.
So could we, Mr. Chair, maybe, again, we have some other items, other people here on other items, but could we hold this till a little later this morning? And again, I don't, you know, because I'd like to have that information. And again, it's ultimately up to this board to make a decision about how we want to utilize these funds in concert with all the other things that we're doing. And I guess I'd like to have that information before we act on this morning. So.
I certainly have no objection to
Okay.
holding that over.
So we can hold the item for a bit.
Okay. You had 2 other items, right, Mr. McCullough?
Yeah, actually 3. Yeah.
Three other items.
Item 9 is the contract to approve the First Amendment to agreement. Oh, sorry, I'm the wrong one. Item 9 is to authorize the execution of a retroactive restatement and Second Amendment to lease agreement with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs for vehicle parking within the Mather Community Campus.
Okay, just a comment. And in my briefing yesterday with Mr. Gill, that this will result in $513,000 in revenues coming from leased parking to the Veterans Administration. And NAV did inform me, but I think I felt it was important to make a note over here today to look at the facility needs out at the Mather Community Campus. We've now occupied that for more than 20 years. We obviously have a new contract with Next Move. VOA was the provider of services for many, many years out there, but it was an aged facility to begin with. And, you know, with previous property sales and so forth, we didn't put additional dollars back into this facility. And again, the campus is a key piece of what we do for homeless services. And with the Veterans Village there, it's quite a contrast. I made this comment yesterday. If you look at the new facilities and new buildings that have been a part of the Veterans Village, and we have our propeller buildings that, again, are functional, but some of those systems are well worn out. And the dining hall, it's been 20 years since that was renovated. And I guess I'm asking that with these dollars in particular, that rather than for economic development purposes, that we actually look at the Mather Community Campus to reinvest there. And again, $513,000 may not go very far. But we did an assessment. I would just note this too with General Services several years ago of all our facilities, and we know there are some pretty big shortcomings. I won't say they're deficiencies, shortcomings out there, and I think it's way past time to begin to reinvest in that facility. And again, I appreciate that Mr. Gill is going to call together. I guess Bruce will be championing that as well. But I always want to make sure that as these dollars get allocated, that they actually go back into facility improvements that support the programming and the housing that's so critical out there for the Mather Community Campus program. So that was my comment. Thanks. That's all I had.
Item 27, I read the full record for the ordinances, but this is for the repealing and reenacting of the county building codes.
Okay. I want to thank certainly county staff and this board. We continue this from the previous meeting to put it over till today. I have no problems with the code changes as outlined, but I do want to raise some issues here, and I've talked with our chief building inspector and with Mr. Hartwig about this, and with the expectation we get a report back. And the areas that aren't necessarily subject to amendment here today or modification, but that I do believe need to be we need to take a closer look at. The sections that relate to the exempt building permits, particularly for agricultural buildings and structures, barns, and livestock structures. There's been some recent examples where that's, I think there's been quite a bit of friction around issues related to those types of structures. And one of the things, and again, I appreciate meeting with our chief building inspector, in the agricultural residential areas where we have a number of accessory buildings. These are not for habitation for humans, but storage and livestock. Currently, we have prohibitions for anything more than 120 square feet requiring building permits. And the state code, as I understand it from my conversation with Ms. Springer, that the state actually allows for 240 square feet. And I think it's way past time for us to take a look at those standards. She's agreed to take a look at that at this board's direction. I also would like to raise the issue as it relates to violation fees. And if the idea is to get compliance from folks and certainly to exercise some discretion, I think that section needs to be reviewed. Again, I won't go into great detail today, but I would ask that we at least have the opportunity for this board to have some further discussion around that. Another area that I wanted to raise as a part of today's conversation is there is a disconnect long-standing between the assessor's office and our building department as it relates to the designation of habitable spaces, as well as the assessed valuation based upon uses. And it's confusing. I think it's confusing certainly to county staff at times, but it's confusing to residents, and sometimes that's the only record we have. And again, this has been ongoing. It's not something that's new. And I guess I would ask that as a part of this, that we would convene the proper parties, our assessor and building officials and Mr. Hartwig and others, to see if there's a way to actually get those records so that they coincide, because I think it causes problems, and I can give some specific examples if people wanted to dive into that. Lastly, would just ask that as we look at trying to clear violations, get people proper permits and so forth, that in my conversation with the chief building inspector, that in some counties, as my understanding, they've taken some different approaches where either they have recorded information that relates to structures, particularly accessory structures, as being non-compliant, as being one way to deal with it. There's also the ability to do an amnesty where you have people come in and violations, the violation portions of the fees may be waived if people get the proper permits. And so I think it's time to visit those sections of the code, and would ask that as a part of that, that we have an opportunity to come back sometime later in the spring, Mr. Chair. And so I didn't mean to go too long, but in some detail, but I did indicate that I would support this today, but I want to have those items come back.
Are we nodding in agreement on that side of the chambers?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
All right.
and Item 29 is the contract for the Franklin Boulevard Bridge replacement over Lost Slough, bids to be received on March 5th.
Okay. Very briefly, Mr. Chair, that certainly glad to see this bridge replacement going forward. It's been 10 years since we actually got notification of receipt of the money, and I know our staff has worked very hard to put together a project that will provide for a safer crossing at Lost Slough. My question is, and we've had this discussion before, that when it comes to some of the salvage wood, particularly the redwood, we have in the past made that available to historical societies and other nonprofit organizations that will use it, and actually have used it in a couple of cases for McFarland Ranch, was a county-owned facility at the Casimas Preserve, and the restoration of the McFarland House. They used that redwood significantly for that renovation project. And I understand this morning that apparently that the salvage was going to go to the contractor, and I guess I'm asking that, as we've done in previous occasions, that we recognize the value of that, obviously, but that we make it available to nonprofits who will put it to good use on restoration projects for historical buildings and other facilities in the county. So.
Yeah, Supervisor Natoli, I believe we have Tim Stevens from DOT. I'll just cover it briefly. This has federal funding, and typically the salvage is given to the contractors you mentioned, which allows them to offset the bid to some extent. I believe we can make arrangement to have it salvaged. Would probably impact the bid, but I'll let Tim kind of cover a little bit more about that.
Good morning, Mr. Natoli and members of the board. I am Tim Stevens, and he is correct. The salvage, we've in the past, if we keep some of the material or try to sell it, that causes a problem with the HPP funding. But the biggest problem is that most of it has been treated. There's been a lot of the members that have been replaced, right, and so those redwood members are gone, and many of the other redwood members have been treated with creosote and just other methods to protect them and keep them in longevity. However, it is the intent to put it in the special provisions that the contractor is to, if they find any heart redwood that is not treated, that it could be reused for them to salvage that material so that it does go to good use and not just out to a landfill.
Okay, and I get that. I knew that a lot of it was treated, but the idea is to set aside the redwood that's not treated and make it available to other organizations who, again, I think do good work, and that would, from the standpoint of restoration of facilities in the county. And again, I'm talking about working with some of the local historical societies. And I know we did that on the Alta Mesa Bridge, and we did it with the Franklin Boulevard Bridge. Both had federal dollars. And in fact, with the Franklin Boulevard Bridge replacement some years ago, county airports purchased a good portion of that and used it in the new airport terminal, Terminal B. And in this case, again, I think you would have historical societies that would be interested, and there may be other organizations. Again, I would look to the nonprofit portion of it and make sure that it's going to be used and not sold. I'm not looking to sell or make a profit off the wood, but to use it in restoration efforts. I know the Elk Grove Historical Society, the Galt Historical Society, maybe Rio Linda, Alberta, and some of those, do restoration of old farmhouses and other buildings and barns on properties that in a lot of cases are underlying ownership with the county. And so I think there's a way to do this in a way that would set the material aside and allow it to be used for those purposes. And again, we've done it in the past, and I see no reason why we can't do it here. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we can modify the contract documents to require that any non-treated redwood be salvaged to the county for that purpose, if that's the board's desire.
In county parks, I see Liz Bell's in the audience, and we have, there are, even uses in the parkway where, again, when you talk about tables and shade structures, some of this, material again, even though it may be used, it's, you know, it's better than what anything you can buy today on the, you know, at least in the, you know, new milled wood. So I guess I would say county parks would be another one who would look if there are Canada projects working with some more nonprofit organizations along the parkway or another county facility. So that's what I'd like to see us do with this contract. So I would make that a part of the motion on the consent item if we can do that. So.
Okay, so
Okay.
please let the record show that that
Okay.
is
Okay. Thanks.
an amendment to the motion made by Supervisor Tully. I believe that concludes
That's-
your comments on consent matters. With regard to item number 3, you heard Supervisor Tully just a few minutes ago suggest that we bring this back later this morning. So I'm going to suggest to our staff that we come back after item 38. That would be our last 10 a.m. item to fully vet that further. Supervisor Frost, do you have anything? Okay. Supervisor Peters.
Yes, thank you. Let the record reflect, I will recuse from item 9. I didn't have time to do the measurements, so I think it's okay, but I'm going to step out.
Okay.
I'm not going to vote on that.
Okay. Supervisor Kenny? Okay, so then I believe we are going to vote on everything on consent with the exception of item 3
Correct.
and 9? Or, well, no, we're voting on 9. She's
Right.
going to recuse.
Okay, that would be the motion.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Tully. Chair will second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
And let the record show that Supervisor Peters has recused herself on item 9. Okay. Just a reminder for folks that have entered chambers since the beginning of the meeting, we welcome you to address the board on any item that's on the agenda or any item not on the agenda. We do ask that you complete a speaker slip, and we have staff in the back of chambers to assist you. Please print your last name clearly so that I can pronounce your name appropriately. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes, and we have that in place so that everyone has a chance to address the board if they so choose. So with that, our next item, please.
Okay, item 35 is the funding request by South County Fire Districts for Safely Out kits.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Tully.
Yeah, again, I would just tee this up that a number of months ago, we received a request from several fire districts in South County. Most of the district areas that they serve and the residents they serve lie outside of the stormwater utility. And they've made this request, and it certainly has been pended for a number of months to receive assistance in the purchase of Safely Out evacuation kits. And I will say that in the intervening time since we received this last spring, that with District 5 neighborhood monies, that I supported some initial work with the Cortland Fire District, but as you'll note from our correspondence, this also includes Wilton, Ileton, Herald, and Walnut Grove districts. And the districts are largely, nearly entirely all volunteer. And again, in many of those areas are in areas that could be at some flood risk. And we know, again, with events that have happened over the last couple of decades, certainly in the Wilton area, but in areas where flood threat exists significantly in the delta portions of the county, that information that would assist with preparedness, disaster preparedness, and certainly would assist the local first responders. In this case, obviously with fire and rescue, it would be the volunteer fire departments, and then obviously the police and sheriff would be the other responder. But I think this board is familiar with the information. This county some years ago purchased a number of these and distributed them to in-home supportive services, caregivers, as well as clients, and made them available through supervisors' offices at community meetings for seniors, for others, and other flood-prone or at least potentially flood-prone areas of the county. So this request is, again, as you're well aware and has been pending for some time, is to purchase about 5,000 of the kits that would then be distributed by the fire departments. And I know we have correspondence to that effect, and there was as a follow-on in early December, I know the county exec's office did respond at least in part to the request. But the item before you today is actually that request, and I'm certainly interested in entertaining it. But we do have a presentation and obviously questions from board members. I think some of you have been briefed. Your offices have been briefed, and again, there's some background information that I know Mr. Dietrich's here in the audience. I don't know if some of the chiefs have, I know there was a couple that were unable to make it. Again, they're largely volunteer. So I guess with that, unless there's any questions, Mr. Dietrich's here to offer certainly some information on the Safely Out project. But again, the request is to provide to residents in this southern portion of the county. But I think there are other portions of the county as well. And so I would be very interested there. In all 5 of our districts are areas that are at flood risk and other disaster risk. And it seems to me that this information is being utilized. Placer County recently supported some of the fire-prone areas there, purchase of the kits and for distribution to those areas. And I know it's been used elsewhere in the state as well as in the nation. So that's kind of the background, and I think it familiarizes us with the topic and the request here. And with that, again, I'd be happy to have the presentation.
Right. Who's up to do the presentation here? All right.
I think he's got about 6 or 7 minutes. There's a short video, and I think Gary's going to add some.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Well, later today, I'll be talking about the 5 residents of Dixville Notch and their impact on the nation. I'm glad this morning to talk about Safely Out. This is close to my own heart. With a brother that passed away while I was in...
Excuse me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'd be happy to do that. Gary Dietrich, founder of the Safely Out Project. Don invited me to speak today. I'm glad to be here. Many of you know me from my work in the broadcast world, but honestly, Safely Out is really one of the places where my heart beats. With an older brother who passed away with disabilities and frail seniors as part of my background, this is close to home. And so I want to reserve much of the balance of my 3 minutes for following a short video that Don asked that we show for people who couldn't be here today. It's 3 or 4 minutes long, but it really will summarize very quickly the Safely Out project, and you'll recognize some of the faces in here, I think, quite clearly. with that, this morning, of course, we're talking about some vulnerable folks in our own county, many of them in all of your districts. It could be Phil Cerna's district, where an Eagle Scout, right in the shadows of Arco Arena, did a project in a senior residential complex. It could be in Sioux Falls district, where we saw Brenda Gallion in there, and their company sponsored 1,000 of these down in the South County to put on the doors of schools and businesses. It could be in any one of your districts, but the important point is this, that the vulnerable need to be protected during disasters, and they often are the ones that are left behind. And so, whether it be the 20,000 kits that went to in-home supportive services clients, which Rick Simonson, who was the director at the time, at his retirement party, reportedly said that of the 3 things he was most proud of in his county work, Safely Out was one of those 3. Whether it be the RAND Corporation in their national report to state and local governments listed Safely Out as its very first best practice nationwide, or whether it be our own county Department of Water Resources, who kept 1,000 of these to distribute themselves. I see Mike Peterson over here. We were invited to also participate. Many of you, I know Supervisor Peters distributed them in your district. Mr. Kennedy, I know your chief of staff said this week you've done the same, and seniors really love them. It's very, very simple. It's an opportunity to empower, as our first responders would say, to create force multipliers. We just don't have the resources in the institutional sense to do what needs to be done during disaster. And so I want to thank Supervisor Natoli for his really hard work. And I want to end with this. You know, there's a fire chief, it almost gets me a little choked up to think about Dave Welch, the fire chief of Cortland. His wife struggled with cancer this last year. He works for Napa Auto Parts. He also preaches at his churches on Sunday mornings, and on top of that, he's the chief of his fire district with 17 volunteers and 3 pieces of equipment to protect everybody in Cortland, California, in the southern part of this county. And he's not alone. One of the things I've learned is that volunteer fire departments and even our institutional fire departments are very concerned about what they're going to do in major disasters. So let me give you 10 seconds to hear as I close here, and I'm going to let them close it out for us, from the folks who are volunteers in the Cortland Fire Department themselves. We've got a little video because they couldn't be here today because they're working at regular jobs. Here's the folks in Cortland who have something to say about this agenda item. Go ahead. That's it. Thanks very much.
Hey, Gary,
Yes.
I have a question, and there may
Sure,
be
of
other
course.
questions here for you. So first, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
So I'm very familiar with the program, and
Yes.
I too have distributed these materials for years at health fairs and other public events that all of us frequent as elected people here in Sacramento County. Do we have any way of avoiding duplicate distribution? Do we map? Do we know who takes these? Perhaps a husband might go to one event and pick up and thinks it's a great idea, picks
Right.
it up, and perhaps the spouse goes to another
Sure.
event, picks. Now the household has 2. So do we have a way of making sure that there's efficient distribution of the kits?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, Supervisor Cerna, 95% of the kits are distributed by what we call our institutional partners in the community. In-home supportive services, the regional center system has distributed a lot of them. School districts in your area, through the gracious support of private and public sector folks, 8,000 went to every student family in the Thomas Unified School District. So only a very small percentage actually go to these kind of fairs that you're speaking about. We do keep some records of those, but we don't attempt to try to cross-check all that. But again, to be very efficient about it, like for example, what's happening in South County in Don's district, is the Cortland Fire is actually keeping a grid. They do have every address that they are distributing to in their fire district. So yes, those records are available for those areas.
And what about the Association of Realtors? It seems to me that this would be something that they might be interested in terms of actually providing to new home buyers,
Right.
So that they can kind of systematically understand who has the kits, and if you're new to an area that's prone to flooding or prone to fire, seems to be an easy way to make sure that that growing population, new population, has those kits.
Yes, we've actually had realtors that have gotten involved in the project, and others. The folks there at 5 Star are in the restoration industry, which is the industry that's responsible during any fires, floods, whatever, for getting people back and forth. They're the ones that supported these. And then just recently in the Placer County, I failed to mention this, but our neighboring county, Placer, in November, their board unanimously voted in support of a similar resolution for $50,000 to expand the project in Placer. We had realtors up in Placer County who are now getting involved. As you know, the fire dangers up there, highlighted in the last couple of years, is very extreme.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary?
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we'll get to Supervisor Foster in a moment. I just wanted to dovetail off of the presentation. I couldn't find anything in the materials, either through SIRE, our internal system for the meeting materials, or the public portal for our meeting today, that speaks to where this funding would come from. It's presented as a funding request, but where's the funding? Where would the funding come from?
We had this item on the agenda and a request of Supervisor Natoli. Mr. Dietrich and Supervisor Natoli wanted to present it to you. This is not a staff item that's coming to you.
Okay, it starts with funding request, so that was kind of my question.
So as way of background, Supervisor Cerna, that in the past when we were approached about it, we have requested the Cortland Fire Department and through Mr. Ferguson that if they're interested in county funding, is to go through a TO process to bring it in, and that's the length of negotiations we've had with them. But the last request came from Supervisor Natoli that Mr. Dietrich wanted to come speak to it, so that's what we bring the items coming to you for that.
Okay, great, thanks. Supervisor Frost?
That answered part of my question. My question was relating to our Office of Emergency Services, and do we already have a protocol or a program in place that would cover this type of emergency response?
Chief Contelmi is coming down to answer that question.
Good morning, Chairman Cerna and Board. Stephen Telmy, Sacramento County Office of Emergency Services. We do not have a program like that. We do distribute materials that are contained in that packet. They're not the same, but they're similar materials. They're usually produced by FEMA or Cal OES or Ready.gov. There are a lot of agencies out there that produce similar types of documents, so those are the types of ones that we provide. We do it when we do some outreach, and we do public education. We hand them out during those times. We don't mail them. We've done surveys to find out what the most effective ways of getting this information out there, and to be honest with you, the national surveys show that the best way of getting this information out is through your realtors or through your insurance companies. They're the ones that most people who have responded to these surveys have said that they received this information from. So we have actually reached out to see whether or not they would like to share this information as well. We currently in the county do not produce any of these documents. We just get them free from Red Cross, Ready.gov, or FEMA or Cal OES. So that's how we provide that information.
Thank you.
Okay, don't go anywhere. We have some other questions here. Don't go anywhere.
Mr. Katelmi?
Don't go anywhere. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. I was wondering about the usefulness of this. I mean, do first responders, if they see that the green light or the red light, are they going to pay attention to that? Is that something that is useful to them or appropriate?
Well, I can tell you what the national standard is. The national standard is that the first responders are going to go into every single building. They're not going to change or switch from one building to the other, whether there's a sign in it or not a sign in it. FEMA makes the recommendation that you put a sign inside the house. So once entry is made into the house by the first responders, that information would be available to them to determine whether or not there's people there. Even with that information, they'll still search the house. So the only advantage I could think of from the signage for the door hanger would be that the fire agencies or the first responders may prioritize based on that, but they're going to set up a grid and they're going to search every single occupancy.
Thank you.
Supervisor Tully.
Yes, Steve. We haven't talked recently about this, but again, you know, we have major metropolitan fire departments, but we also have rural fire departments, and you're well aware of that. And that's where the request comes through from, and the ones that are on the letterhead are all in District 5. But, you know, this county has a strong tradition of certainly the rural fire departments, and again, they are largely volunteer. And I guess my question is that, you know, if you have a firefighter, a local firefighter that you know that, you know, oftentimes resides in the community, not in all cases, because I know they're using interns to try to get the coverage and the paramedic expertise, so they have trainees and internees in a number of the volunteer fire departments. But if somebody comes to your door with this, and they know their area residents, it would seem to me that that's pretty effective and powerful. Now, you know, again, to the efficacy of how it's used in disaster, I would hope we never have to use them. But, you know, our OES, you and others are not distributing this. We have a request from the fire departments to have these kits made available to them, this information, so that they can distribute directly and keep track of that, to Supervisor Cerna's question earlier of Mr. Dietrich, to make sure that it goes to those households. Now, again, households turn over, people may, not always live there, and so again, you know, if you don't refresh at some point in time, then it may, you know, become a bit dated in the sense that over time it may get set aside or whatever. But it would seem to me, Steve, and again, your experience is vastly more than mine is in this area, but that's a pretty effective way to provide a kit that then has the information, certainly the emergency call numbers, but, you know, the placard and so forth. And again, you know, I've talked to a couple of the chiefs, and they seem to think it's great. I mean, and again, they're not, you know, the Metropolitan Fire District that has, you know, a tremendous amount of wherewithal, and certainly, you know, the training and all that goes behind that in a more suburban or urban setting. But these folks certainly care. And so I guess my question to you is that, is there anything objectionable about that? Again, because we're not providing to them. I'm not going door to door. You're not going door to door in those communities and providing to them, and we're not the first responders. And so, how is it, you know, that we can get the information in the hands of those folks in, I think, any more effective way than having the fire people? And they're the ones that are, you know, they represent the people in the district. They have elected boards, and they're, you know, a lot of those volunteers of lifelong generational volunteers. So I guess my question is so isn't that an effective way to be prepared?
Well, you know, that's what I thought too. That was my first thought, coming from a firefighter or for a police officer. If they were to hand these things out, or even some of the CERT programs, that would be a much more effective way of getting a person to actually buy into it. However, when I look into it, the data doesn't support it. The data supports the fact that the information that people use is typically coming from the realtors and from the insurance companies, which was surprising to me. It was because I did think that the information coming from first responder would be more impactful. Now, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying that the data I've looked at, which is quite extensive, I've looked at the national data, and that's what the data is telling me.
Okay, so that's not a national, and I appreciate the qualification as it relates to the data. But do OES offices print their own information then? Because what I hear you say is that you know, we rely on them, whether it's, you know, Citizens Voice Safely Out kits or something to be provided by some other entity. We don't do anything on our own. And I guess why is that? Well, I mean, as a, you know, Office of Emergency Services for our county.
Right. Well, we do have a pamphlet that we do provide that's developed by it's a cooperative effort by UC Davis and Sacramento County. We've been doing that for about 10 years now, and it is something that we make available. It's called Are You Prepared? And it's about a 30-page booklet, and it has all the information that we're talking about in that booklet. But in addition to that, the primary reason why we don't print our own is because this information is available free. So we can get it from Red Cross, I can get it from FEMA, from Cal OES, Ready.gov. All of them will provide that same information free. Now, it's not exactly like what's in a Safely Out program, but it's similar to what's in there. With one exception is none of them have a door hanging kit. There are some programs out there that have signage. You put it in your window, you hang it on your house, but most of them are pulling away from that. And the reason they're pulling away from the information that I'm getting is that there's a concern with not the part that you need help, but the part that you're out. The part that you're out is not really going to be, as I said before, is not going to determine whether or not a first responder will enter that house to do a search. They're going to do it anyway. But it does concern me that it might tell somebody else that has more nefarious reasons that this house is empty and maybe I could pay a visit and remove things from that house. So that's my only concern. Everything in that Safely Out kit is good information. Same information or same type of information that we give out.
Steve, just again, not that you would necessarily know this, but you might. So are police and fire backing away from this type of an approach? I mean, again, we saw on the tape, obviously, it's, a few years old, but, we saw the then sheriff in Sacramento County. We saw fire service personnel, both of those folks are now retired, but, that was at the aftermath, obviously, of Katrina and some of the other hurricane disasters nationally. But I guess I'm to what you said, so is now our fire service and police services saying, no, we don't support this type of approach?
They're not, from the research I've been doing, it looks like they're not endorsing it. They're saying neutral on it. And for the most part, they are endorsing the point about having a signage on your door. I'm not going to speak for the nation. I'm just telling you what I've researched and what I've found. I know that the paid fire departments here in Sacramento County do not endorse it, nor do they oppose it. But they do say that they will always go into every single occupancy, regardless of what signage may be on there, whether it's a door hanger or a sign in your window. They're going into that place.
So, Supervisor Natoli, on that point, as if the emergency is declared, we become the lead agency. Steve and myself have the responsibility. In conversations, I think the point that Steve's emphasizing and weighs very heavy on my mind when this item came up, just because there's a sign doesn't mean that you're not going to go search. Our expectation is you're going to set up a grid, you're going to search everybody in there. We do not want, and I'm not suggesting this will do it, that there's a sign and then something bad happens to that person. So sign or no sign, for when an emergency hits here, we got to do search. I think I can speak on Steve's behalf too. Our expectation is our first responders are going in and checking every establishment to make sure there's not a person in there that needs to come out. Now, the other information, that's not what I'm getting at. I just want to get at the sign issue that you were asking. I have spoken a little bit with Steve and some of the other folks that are first responders, and Steve's absolutely right. They want to stay neutral. They consider this to be a funding request that Mr. Dietrich is making through the volunteer fire departments. But what I can tell you that if an emergency hits right now, our expectation will be that we'll go in and search.
And I appreciate that. We're going to do everything we can to save lives and protect property and all that goes with a disaster response. I guess what I want to come back to is that we have the rural fire departments. Again, they don't have a lot of funding wherewithal, and some of those departments operate on less than $200,000 a year, or roughly thereabout. I mean, they provide services 24/7, and again, do the best they can. And yeah, if we had a disaster declaration, obviously, then you have a whole network that's well-oiled, and it has all the ability to call upon whoever can come in and assist. But you still have the volunteer fire departments and working with the residents and the occupants of buildings in those communities. And it would seem to me that we have an additional tool that assists. And again, these fire departments, I trust if they're going to be distributing, they're going to be familiar with how it would be utilized. And again, they're going to be the first responders. If a flood happens, I would pretty much bet, and particularly if it was one that you had something that was unexpected that took place. I mean, obviously, would get flood preparedness. We know there's rivers are rising and so forth. That they're going to be the first ones there, and the sheriff and the police, depending upon where it was at, would be right there on the spot as well. But if they see this as being a valuable tool, and are going to be the actual ones distributing it, it would seem to me that's a connection rather than just handing it out at a safety fair, somebody taking it home and using it as well. But and where it may or may not be endorsed or folks are more neutral. I didn't get that sense from not just communication, but certainly in talking with at least a couple of the chiefs about what they see as being the viability of using this. And again, the funding request is just that. It's not to go through the TOT process to compete with, culture and arts and so forth. It's a safety request. And it's one, I guess I would just lastly say this, Mr. Chair, that in the past, this county certainly, and again, Ms. Peterson's here, but through the stormwater utility, we funded this significantly for distribution throughout the county and utilized it. And, thinking has changed a bit or people got more neutral on it, so be it. But nonetheless, the request is here to assist our local fire agencies in serving the residents that we all represent. That's certainly, they're in District 5 in this case, but it could be anywhere. I mean, again, I don't see this as being, whether it's in the Thomas or Orangeville's high ground, but, if you had some other disaster, that we could use this information, again, assuming that the first responders would use it. And I agree with you. Yeah, we wouldn't, bypass houses, but again, that would be certainly helpful if, this tool were available. So again, it seems to me that this is a reasonable request. It's not a, repetitive request, and it's certainly one that would, assist those volunteer departments who, again, have signed on and said they would like to have this available to them, but they don't have the wherewithal, obviously, to purchase the kits. So that's the nature of the request here today.
Just a quick comment. Like you, I know most of the fire chiefs down there, and I've been working with them for years, and I respect them. I think they run a great organization down there with the limited resources that they have. So I think, for me, this is just an incident where we have a difference of opinion on the effectiveness of these Safely Out kits. And I don't have any data that's been presented to me that shows me how effective they are. I do have polling that we've looked at, and that polling indicates, again, the best way of getting the information out is through the realtors or the insurance companies.
If I could, Steve, and I appreciate the comment, but I would just say that hopefully we never have to have a real actual demonstration of how effective they are. I think the idea is that they're there when you need them. But thank goodness we haven't had, the nature of flooding and or fire disasters we see in other communities. And again, I hope that never happens in this county, no matter what we do with this request or any other request, because those are bad incidents.
No, I agree. But when I was talking about effectiveness, I just meant by whether or not the people would keep these and use these. And the polling that we've done, most of them have indicated that they are not even aware of it. They forget it, And I'll just give you one quick example. We distribute our Sacramento Alert flyers, asking people to sign up for our notification system. We have a very small number of people that reply to them, including in those areas that we're talking about now, the Cortland, the Herald, the Wilton. Now, when we have a disaster occur, like the floods in 17, we have a huge number of people signing up. But in between those disasters, very few people sign up to these programs, and even when we send out these flyers.
Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions for you, Steve.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
But don't go too far.
well, if you want to ask some questions, go ahead. I just wanted to say I have a lot of questions about this. Don feels passionately about it, and I would suggest your district funds if you want to do this. But I also want to know who is getting the money. Is it a nonprofit? Does the nonprofit have current status? Is it open or closed? And would the applicant be willing to submit their tax records and 990s and that sort of thing, like we would other nonprofits, to find out if they're still in business, and that it goes to a currently licensed nonprofit. And it's also $10 a bag versus free. So that's a problem for me. And I think it's important to take the comments of the director of the emergency services about what is most useful to first responders. So at the moment, those are my comments.
Okay. Supervisor Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Catelli. So I am very hesitant to second guess my director of Office of Emergency Services, particularly the work that you've done through the fire season and all that. So I'm going to just cut right to the chase and say, ask you if you would recommend, should you be asked, that we spend this money on this product.
I would not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So to the chair's point, it seems to me that our issue isn't lack of product. Our issue isn't lack of information. To me, our issue is the dissemination of that information. And I would like to see us as a county look at how we can better work with the realtors or insurance agents, insurance companies, to better get that information out. Because I do think that there is a lacking of the outreach that I think we could do better. So I think that our focus should be more on the effort to get the information out than it is on recreating something that, as Supervisor Peters said, is already available for free for the most part.
Michael Peterson, Water Resources. Supervisor Kennedy, I just wanted to speak to that point. Water Resources does an annual outreach for flood preparedness. We do an annual outreach program, multiple media, as well as at public events. And it's all centered around putting the information out to people to make them aware of risk, how to assemble kits. We do that through our utility bills. We do that through just direct mailers to properties that are in the floodplain. And this is an annual thing because there is memory fatigue. So it's a constant messaging that has to continue. And so we do that. I just wanted to make sure that's understood. There's a pretty robust outreach program in terms of flood preparedness within the county. And
let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say a county supervisor recently bought a house in the middle of a floodplain.
Easy there, Michael.
This information, should be in a welcome home kit.
I think, Supervisor Kennedy, your point's well taken. I think what Michael's point is, we do a lot of this, but I think both supervisors are correct. We do need to get this information out. Folks tend to forget. They get flyers that put it to the side.
I'm not criticizing Michael.
No, I just want to make sure.
I just think we could do better.
I think we will do better. We will work more with the realtors and insurance agents to get the information, welcome home kit. Right. And to the point that Chief Cantelmi made is that when we have a disaster, we get an uptick of people signing up. And it's memory. If we need to get folks, as you're moving in, hypothetical supervisor moving in a house, we'd like to get your phone number in our system so we can call you. So that we need to do more on that. Point well taken on that.
Thank you, Dan.
Supervisor Tully.
Michael, before you leave, I have a question for you. So the efforts that you were referencing, is that the county newsletter that goes out? That's the extent of it?
No, it's specific mailings.
That's all I got at my house.
It's
so
specific mailings we send out to properties in the floodplain. There's utility bill messaging. There's media messaging, radio, internet, television. We do an annual flood preparedness outreach.
Right. But the only direct is the mail. I mean, I get that. So that you get the one thing in the mail every season.
Probably more than one. I can't speak to
I don't know.
what you receive.
I read my mail. But
we have similar kits where we actually hand them out at events. They include, how to assemble how to put together your own floodplain or flood emergency kit. It includes a small radio that's would allow someone to get access to radio alerts. But the idea is it's a talking point. It is to get the conversation about flood preparedness. It is not the flood preparedness kit. Flood preparedness kit is a pretty big, if you want to do it, it's a significant tub full of equipment that you're going to put together. It's part of how we start the conversation with residents.
So how do you reach folks? Again, I want to add, because there is a bit of a distinction here, and that is that I get it in stormwater utility, largely urban, suburban, a few areas that surround, the area in Galt there. But Delta's not in the stormwater utility. Wilton's not in the stormwater utility for the most part. There's a little bit of area that's covered. Harold's not in the, Slough House is not in it. So how do you reach folks there? I mean, again, is it just the same? It's different than if you're in Arden Arcade or you're in the Pocket or you're in the Thomas area where you're, obviously you're much more concentrated population and may or may be a higher or not degree of flood risk or some other risk. So how do you reach people out in those far reaches of rural?
Again, all properties that are in the floodplain are on a distribution list for information that's mailed to them, directs them to the county's Storm Ready website, which has an even deeper dive on how to be prepared, directs residents to Red Cross websites, FEMA websites, state OES websites. Again, the information is out there, and we're using our mailing to folks in the floodplain, in or out of the utility, to direct their attention to where that information is. Contact our office if they have questions. That's a standard part of our outreach program.
And historically, though, we've used this material after the Katrina event, did we not, through Water Resources?
There was a 5-year period where the county committed to this program. At the end of that 5 years, we determined that it was probably more efficient ways, cost-effective ways to do it, and we did not support it any further.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for the chief. We admonished you several times not to go far, and there you are in the back row.
Sorry for the delay.
So you made mention of the fact that I guess FEMA, the federal government, is producing something very similar.
Yeah. Well, if you open up the Safely Out packet, there's a lot of documents in there. Those documents, there are similar ones to that, but through FEMA or many other organizations as well.
And do we stockpile those? Do we have access to those? I mean, the same way we might have access to the Safely Out kits?
We do. My office has examples here, if you wanted to see them, of the pamphlets that they would produce.
Okay.
And also the Are You Prepared booklet that we developed along with UC Davis. So they are available, and we do distribute them, but we typically just distribute them at public outreach events, that type of thing.
So I'm glad you just briefly showed the materials. I mean, it seems to me it's a pretty big difference between the type of material, right? I mean, it seems to me the Safely Out materials are intended to be very proactive. In other words, they require the owner of the kit to do something with it besides just read it. Is there anything similar that we have access to in that regard?
No, not that I'm aware of. The information that I'm aware of, and again, I haven't done an exhaustive search to see whether there's kits or similar to the Safely Out kit, but the information that I've pulled from the internet and through talking to Cal OES and FEMA is basically they have a library system in which you can go actually submit a request, or you can actually get these things online and have them sent to you. Red Cross has a room, a resource room, I think is what they call it, and in that room they have a lot of the same information as well that's available to the public. They would even be willing to assist with distributing it. I don't want to speak for Red Cross, but I talk to them at least on a quarterly basis, and I've asked them about distributing information before, and they said that they would potentially help. If you're looking for someone to do this, on a permanent basis, where they might do it yearly or something like that, I don't know that Red Cross would do that, but I know they would at least do it for a one-time event.
Okay, and then I had you mentioned earlier you had some concerns about the nature of the door hangers, possibly, it sounded like you meant inspiring looting or, some other kind of nefarious occupation of the structure. So what about the fact that I have to guess that this could happen, that during a flood event, for instance, that even after our first responders might do their grid check of the structures that they're going to do, regardless of any kind of signage campaign, that the units could hypothetically become reoccupied depending on the nature of the circumstance, where people feel they need to get to higher ground, so they might find an unoccupied residence to get on the roof, for instance, something like that. Right. So is there a built-in problem where you get lulled into a false sense of security, potentially, in terms of being a first responder, and even if you look on your record and you say, oh yeah, we checked the residence on, Elm Street, that it's could potentially be reoccupied in the course of a disaster?
Well, the way they would typically do this, I was a member of the USAR for 10 years, and the way they typically do this is they have their own markings that they would place on the building. So they use like a chalkboard, and they'll put a cross on it, and in those quadrants, they will put indications as to whether there's a safety risk, there's a deceased person, whether the house can be occupied or is unstable and no entry is allowed at all. So they have those kind of markings on that. And once it's done once, they typically don't go back and review it unless there is something in their markings that indicates that they need to come back. So if somebody were to reoccupy a building that was marked as a building that should not be occupied or red tagged essentially, then they would not be aware of it unless somebody brought it to their attention.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Those are all the questions I have for you. I do have a question for Mr. Dietrich. Thank you, Chief.
Don't go too far.
And if I might, very briefly, Supervisor Cerna, just to...
Hold on before you
Yes.
say anything. I have a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. There was mention by our CEO of our transient occupancy tax, our TOT, and we've had a process in place now for 3 years, a very methodical process, a very involved process to fully vet applications for those scarce taxpayer dollars. Did you apply for the TOT this year or previous years?
No, we weren't even made aware of that. And again, I'm not the one making the request here. This is the this is the fire districts in Supervisor Natoli's district. I'm simply here today speaking on their behalf because they're in jobs. They're volunteers. So we wouldn't, as an organization, make that request.
Okay.
This is coming from the 5,000 families in the South County represented by those half a dozen volunteer fire districts. That would be a question that would be properly posed to them, if I might.
But can I finish, please?
Go ahead, please.
So, is there a structure, like a nonprofit structure? Would it be you if, let's say, those fire districts in Supervisor Natoli's district wanted to get together and, let's say, next year apply for the TOT funding? Would they do it under the auspices of an organization that you run?
No, they would do it through their districts, and they would simply get the kits from the nonprofit organization. That's typically the way we do it. Most of the time, the organizations who are distributing the kits are the ones that make the request. So that would, in this case, be this case would be the 5 or 6
but I believe,
volunteer fire departments.
I believe, and I'm looking to my colleagues who actually are much more involved with this process, Supervisor Peters and Supervisor Kennedy. I believe the process forbids government agencies. So I assume. I don't know.
Well, then that wouldn't be an appropriate venue to be asking for funds, because we wouldn't make that application.
Where I'm going with this is that because of that restriction, is there the possibility that mostly the volunteer fire departments could work under the umbrella of a fiscal agent in the form of a nonprofit, and would that be you, or could it be you?
I suppose they could find a nonprofit. I don't know that it would be ours, but that would be their choice. But again, to Supervisor Natoli's important point, this is a public safety matter. This is not a cultural opportunity. This is, and in the view of these folks who work down there, this is helping them save lives. So, I mean, to be frank about it, I think their view when they received the letter and, well, you can compete with these other funding sources, they were like, this is helping us do our essential job. That's what this is about, and I think that's who they would speak to. If I might just take 30 seconds to respond to comments that were made, there are no duplicate materials, to say flat, at the Red Cross. We just met with the executive leadership of the Red Cross chapter for the entire area of Northern California. Just 2 weeks ago. They reinforced what we already knew. The Red Cross does not, in fact, produce materials like this, nor does State OES. State OES did a $500,000 grant for these exact materials. Finally,
I think that point was just clearly made when I asked to see, and we saw for ourselves.
Very good. I wanted to make sure that was clear. Yeah. And secondly, on the point of this has never been funded by DWR since the original grant, Mike knows very well that $7,500 just 2 years ago went to the Safely Out project, and $5,000 went from a state grant through County DWR for these kits in the aftermath, and right alongside the concerns about Oroville. So I think those points are important to take note of. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer them.
Don't see any.
To the best of my ability. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Mr. Tully?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, and again, I appreciate certainly the questions from my colleagues, and I think the thoughtfulness of certainly hearing this matter this morning. I would just say that, kind of the way I opened, that we have a request from rural fire departments. I happen to be given the good fortune as a member of this board to represent, the rural fire districts in this county. Their letter of last week, they basically said that they believe in the value and efficacy of, the material, Safely Out, and they believe it's a tool that's an important part of their preparedness efforts in the southern part of the county. I do feel, again, as Ms. Peters said, I'm passionate about it. I did put some community monies up this past year that funded 500 kits, and the Cortland Fire District likewise put up, through their volunteer fundraising efforts, the funding to put another 250 kits, so that was 750 kits. But again, that's still a far cry from, roughly 6,000 that we started with. And I'm prepared to, again, stand behind that additionally. But again, as we all know, that there's a lot of draws on our community dollars, and again, public safety certainly is a primary one for me and for other members of this board. But I think that to the other question about competitive, again, these folks oftentimes are focused in on obviously the work they're doing, but I guess collectively they could come together and seek funding, but they'd have to have a nonprofit partner because of the rules that we laid out relative to the TOT process that said you can't be a governmental entity. So a rural fire department, either individually or collectively, couldn't come forward to us and say, this is an important aspect for our department. And they don't have a lot of ability to raise dollars. They don't. They have very small tax bases. They protect the residents and the property in their districts. And I think a tool such as this is important to them. They'll do their job irrespective of whether they have this in the hands of the residents. But I'm supportive of the effort, and I guess I would just say that for the request that's before us, assuming there was some consideration by my colleagues here, I would out of community monies allocation, assuming we get the similar allocation as we did in past years, stand for half of the request here, which would be significant. That'd be probably on $25,000 if we had a match from another source with the county. But that may not be what my colleagues believe is sufficient. But to me, it's important, and I think again. Whatever national data shows, I believe that the fire districts know far better than me or others, what the needs are in their district. And again, they're going to do their job irrespective of Safely Out kits or not. But I think it's an important request. And so I guess I would just leave that with my colleagues if there's some receptiveness to that. Otherwise, I'll do my best through the funding that I have available to assist the districts and certainly the residents in the rural part of the county.
Thank you. Question for County Council. So the way that this item has been noticed, it's a bit ambiguous. It's not kind of a standard agenda item. There's no action that I can discern from the materials that we're being expected to take formally. It just says funding request, and it's been presented as a presentation from a board member with the assistance of with Mr. Dietrich. So what is the limitation of what we can and cannot consider or do today?
Thanks. I think to answer your question, yes, it is very broad and general. So if the board desires to make the funding request, obviously the county executive and staff would have to figure out what funds, county funds, they would be using for that. And then also to probably bring back something to the board, a contract, or if they're going to do it through the TOT program, do the contracting through that, or the neighborhood assistance program, as Mr. Natoli mentioned, for at least half of it. But I think it would require further action by the board.
Okay, so we can have a discussion, we can have further discussion about potential funding sources today. We can give general direction, if it's the will of the board, to our CEO to refine a future agenda item with identification of those funding sources so that we can make an informed decision.
Correct.
Okay, so here's, as chair, what I would like to do then is kind of hear from my colleagues. We've already heard from Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Peters about their position, I think pretty clear position on this. Haven't heard from Supervisor Frost, and I'm certainly willing to chime in, but I think we need to kind of understand where we are as a board before we can really take the next step and give direction to the CEO. Ms. Frost?
Yes. Well, I think your project is worthwhile, very worthwhile, and commend you for it. I struggle to be able to support it only because it seems to duplicate what the county is already doing for free, and I'm not sure I'm not, based on the conversations that we've had, I'm not really sure it creates any further efficiencies. I mean, if the emergency responders are going to search every house anyway, I'm just not sure this is maybe the right audience for what you're trying to do. Maybe it is better to approach the realtors and the business community, the insurance providers, but for the county at this time, we're already covering most of the bases that are covered by your packet in our current work with FEMA and other providers. So I'm not able to support it at this time. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm a bit torn on this subject. I think there is some value to the Safely Out materials. I've made mention this morning that I've used them myself in terms of helping to distribute them in the district I represent. And certainly I have some seriously flood-prone areas in District 1. And certainly as a resident of Natomas, I have a great respect for our first responders and the important roles that they play to not just respond to emergencies, but to help our constituents avoid being victims of those emergencies. But I think it's pretty clear that there's not going to be a majority of this board today that necessarily wants to move forward with the funding request. What I would like to suggest to Mr. Dietrich, because I think almost all of us have touched on this, is there's been a lot of mention again about the role of the realtors in particular, and you know, I'm not a realtor. I believe Supervisor Frost has a background in real estate, so perhaps she can chime in. But I got to believe that individual realtors, build their budgets into what they do to sell property, to include materials that they provide to their prospective buyers, and or when they purchase property, they get, as Supervisor Kennedy mentioned, a welcome home basket or what have you. And I didn't hear any mention of whether or not there's been a direct ask of the realtors to consider funding this as part of that. In other words, to kind of arm the realtors through their association with the ability to purchase the packets en masse so that they can be distributed by their membership. And so I think your prospect, Mr. Dietrich, of doing that is probably going to be better than what I feel is the case today relative to the disposition of this board. And so, Mr. Tolley, I don't know if you have any final thoughts, but
no. Well, I will stand up with, I say, community monies to assist the rural fire districts, and I appreciate the comments of my colleagues. I can count to 3 here, and so it's clear. And I do think the ability to compete through the TOT process that was offered, that may have not been correct in the letter that went out, because fire districts could not compete in that process as it was structured, so that was inaccurate if that was the specific reference. Again, there has been private sector support for this. I think you saw the one person on the video that was presented, a 5-Star Restoration, had actually helped purchase kits for institutional distribution, schools and businesses in the Delta. And so again, there are any number of partnerships, and I think as a county, recognizing that we have distinctive geographical areas, and certainly we represent all the residents of the county, urban, suburban, or rural, that request comes from districts who don't have a lot of wherewithal, and I think that the merit for the use is there. I'm supportive, but clearly today there's not, and again, we would have to structure this for action, and so unless there's some direction out of this board, again, I'm prepared to stand up with community monies, and if there was, a match, again, TOT is general fund, as we're told, ad nauseum, that is general fund, but, and again, I think that, for residents who, like all the rest of the residents in this county, whether they live in a metropolitan fire district or an urban fire district, they pay property taxes and they frequent our restaurants and so forth. And it just seems to me that it's not an unreasonable request. And certainly if there is a need for documentation behind it, I understand that. But, at this juncture, I say I'm prepared to support it, but I also, unless there's some other level of consideration here for today's purposes, I'm going to go back and, assuming we have community monies available to us, I'm going to, I'll put money forward as I did last year, and the request doesn't go away. But I think it's clear to me today that there's not support for it moving forward, at least from the request that's before us today. So.
Okay. So is that clear to our executive team?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Thank you to those that took time to address
Thanks,
the board
Chair.
on this subject today. All right. Next item, please.
Item 36 is the one-year action plan, federal programs allocation process workshop number 1.
Good morning, Chair Sarnak, members of the board.
Let's get your mic on.
I'm Tyrone Roderick Williams, Deputy Executive Director of Development at SHRA, the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. My purpose for coming before you all today is really twofold. One, to explain the process by which we review the one-year action plan and the process by which we identify potential projects, opportunities. And that's the first part. The second part is to hear from you. This is a workshop, and so we would love to be able to get your feedback and recommendations as we move forward. This is one of many meetings and conversations that we will have with you as we prepare to later this fall submit the final proposal to HUD for funding. The Community Development Block Grant objectives are really defined as to create ladders of opportunity for low and moderate residents through the following points. One, through affordable housing. That affordable housing could come in the form of multifamily rehabilitation and emergency repair programs. The other is for public facilities and infrastructure. That includes community centers, parks, libraries, pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And the third, public services, which include senior services and homeless services. All of the block grant funding was designed to really meet some national objectives, and there are 3. One, for low and moderate income area benefit. And that includes primarily residential areas that have at least 51% of individuals at the low or moderate income level. The second is for low and moderate income limited clientele, to really focus these dollars on areas that have primarily household incomes of 80% or less. And the third, low and moderate income housing, looking at individual households that are at 80% area median income or less. There are some clearly identifiable eligible activities, and they include public facilities and infrastructure improvements, public services, acquisition, clearance and remediation activities, home ownership assistance, planning and administration, and environmental studies. There are also some ineligible activities, and they are defined as general government buildings and expenses, operating and maintenance expenses for non-public services, purchase of construction, equipment, and furnishings, income payments, new housing construction, political and religious activities, supplanting of funds, and regional parks and facilities.
Can I just interrupt? there real quick. On the last bullet point there, regional parks and facilities, it's my understanding that there's an exception to that. And the exception is that if you are making improvements to regional park facilities per the Americans with Disabilities Act, they are eligible.
That is correct.
Okay, so I think that's an important footnote to that. Thank you.
For the last 7 years, we've been engaged in a planning process for the community development block grant investments. The normal time frame is 5 years, but because we were engaged in the assessment of impediments, HUD provided us, which includes 16 separate jurisdictions and agencies. HUD gave us the opportunity to expand that. And so this represents the investment over the last 7-year period. Then in the first category, you see the districts. In the second category, it's low and mod population by percent of each one of those districts. The third column is the allocated percentage of the resources that were invested in those districts based on the percentage of low and moderate income. The third is the number of projects in each one of those districts. Now the allocation compared to the low and mod percent is not a federal requirement. It is a goal that we try to achieve over a 5-year period. In this case, it's over the 7-year period.
Tyrone, sorry again, I'm going to interrupt here. So I just want to be clear. When you say in those districts, you mean in the unincorporated portions of those districts. Because if you look at the district I represent, District 1, I guarantee you, which overlaps with the city of Sacramento primarily, there's a substantial amount of low, very low income communities within the district that I represent that happen to be in the city of Sacramento, not the unincorporated county.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thanks. Could I just get a clarification, Mr. Chair? Tyrone, again, we have agreement cities with the cities of Ileton, Galt, and Folsom. And so does it include in those incorporated cities as well, where we've had projects that, I don't know so much in Galt, but obviously one of the projects has been in the city of Ileton. And so when we say, just to his question, to be clear about it, that unincorporated area and or agreement cities, which were previously the three smallest cities in the county, where we have those agreements where we can fund block grant over and above what they might get as either agreement for a certain allocation. We can also do projects in those small cities, right?
Yes, sir. And we currently have projects that I'll identify.
Okay, I just want to be clear
those,
though, the clarification. So it's unincorporated and the three and
the agreement cities.
And agreement cities. Okay, Folsom, Ileton, and Galt. Okay, thanks.
There's a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Peters.
Could you skip back to you move forward off your last slide to the 2013-19? I'd like you to explain the disparity of these statistics of the low mod population and the allocated percent. It's information I've been asking for since around 2014, and we're just getting it. So I'm glad to get it. I'm disappointed to see these kinds of numbers. So I wonder if you have some reasoning you'd like to present.
Well, we do have, and I can present the breakdown of all of the projects by districts during that time frame. But during that frame, what we received were projects that were presented by the county staff, as well as some of the projects that came from you all. And we proceeded to move forward with those projects based on the funding that was available and also the process by which it took to get those projects funded. What I mean by that is that some projects require multiple phases and multiple years of funding. They may begin with a planning process, and that's funded, and then it moves into the construction and bidding process. And then in between their times, we've experienced significant increases in cost overruns, and we've had to go back and remodify or do mid-year or mid-budget corrections to meet those adjustments. And so even though the goal is to be to respond according to the percentages, the actual Implementation of that is varied over time. And as we shared, during this period, we may see that there are some districts who have a significant higher level of investment compared to their low mod population. But as we move forward in our next planning effort, there may be a difference. And so we've tried to do two things: respond to the requests that come direct from the supervisors, as well as the requests that come from staff and projects that were previously funded. And so again, this is a goal that we have, and that's our effort.
I heard that. I think that's kind of a lot of baloney kind of answer. I think when your percentages are this far out of whack, and you're kind of sounded to me like you tried to blame it on the county for putting forth projects, and it would have been appropriate for you to say, your organization to say, well, your district already has enough, or this district doesn't have the percentages. I mean, it's pretty easy to me, in my mind, over a 7-year period to at least get close to the appropriate percentages.
Supervisor, if I may just chime in on that bit too. What we heard from the board very clearly was that the process needed to be looked at. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What we heard very clearly from the board was that the process needed to be looked at, because prior to this new way that we're doing it, there wasn't time really to fully assess this kind of distribution or to weigh in on potential projects and things. So, and you asked us very clearly to look at this distribution to see if it could be addressed going forward. So what we have here is a method where staff are weighing in earlier, you're getting a chance to weigh in earlier, and we're specifically looking at this in terms of what we propose to you going forward so we can try to balance out this distribution.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I wish it had happened earlier. I think it'd be very easy to have statistics in a staff report on populations and allocated percentages. So
I think your point's
glad
well.
to hear we'll have it going forward.
I think your point's well taken. The board has brought this issue up, and we will be taking that direction. And again, the reason we're in front of you today is to have a dialogue with you in a workshop. Not so much on percentages, but also what kind of projects. Some of you identify projects very early on. We know those, but this is an opportunity to get whatever your wants and needs for us to have not only an idea for the next year, but for next couple of years too. I know next couple of years can change, but if we hear from you, then we can look at the percentage and make adjustments.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect them to be perfect.
Right. No, we're not.
You know, you're gonna,
But not a
closer
2
than
not a
this.
2 to 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I can think of areas around, where my district butts up against the city of Sacramento, and I've been trying to get sidewalks in and other improvements in those areas, and it could combine with the city and could have made the areas better. I'm just really wound up about this. So I hope it gets a lot better going forward.
Supervisor Tully?
Yeah, Tyrone, so this chart just reflects infrastructure public facilities, because there's allotments out of the block grant program that go for public services as well as for housing. Do you have a chart that shows that reflects to, not just that, but then if we get into this division of allocated percentages under the public works and infrastructure piece of it, as to where those dollars go? Because I mean, there is some relativity, at least in my view.
The CDBG, though.
It's all CDBG. There's CDBG goes into the 5.7 million. There's money that goes to other things, right? Besides public infrastructure.
That's a description of all of the items that come under
And that's my
block
point.
grant.
Yeah, right. The homeless activities, the Meals on Wheels, which serves all of us, there's an allocation. That's my point. And home ownership is coming out of that same pot of money, those block grant. Now we made decisions. There's some guidelines, maximums. But I guess my question is that with that, is there any flexibility? We made decisions some years ago to fund Meals on Wheels out of block grant when we were in dire budget straits. But that's money that could it go to the infrastructure public facilities column, or is that maxed out? I guess that's my question as to how that, within that $5.7 million, because we make some other choices that then take that money off the table for consideration for distribution, whatever that allocated percentage might be, and or low mod population. Is that accurate?
Yes, there is flexibility. The one area where there seems to be less flexibility according to the government guidelines is under public services, which has a 15% cap. That the number that currently is there represents about a 13%, but all of the other areas or items under block grant are up for discussion based on you all's guidance.
Okay, so if I could just to follow on to that, so again, recognizing we've given direction around housing development, preservation of home ownership, but again, you know, we can see where that's targeted if we were looking at kind of this distribution. Obviously, grant planning administration goes for any of the activities that would be a part of what you're doing. The agreement cities are, you know, that's a fairly long-standing policy with those 3 cities. But I think if we're going to give, you know, a full spectrum look at this beyond just what's in public, then we ought to have some breakdown, if that's what we're going to get into in the conversation here at the dais about, you know, fairness and equity as it relates to distribution. Then I think we ought to at least see where we have some flexibility, recognizing it might require program shifts or, you know, or a different policy direction. But also, I think it would show that, it may show even bigger disparities than what were on the other chart. I don't know, but I mean, because that's not a part of what's in this packet today. So, and the last thing I think is important to note is that the low mod designated areas can shift from, you know, plan period to plan period. Is that's accurate, right?
That is correct. And those areas are identified by HUD and distributed. And so as the areas shift, then it creates an opportunity for investment in those areas that were added. And I think in our meetings with each one of you all, for those areas where there was an adjustment or a shift, we had the opportunity to sit down and alert you of those shifts.
Right, and I guess my point being there that you can fall in or out depending upon, you know,
that is correct.
How HUD does it. It probably doesn't happen all that quickly, but although I did note in District 5 that, you know, the one area, Rosemont, went out, but another one came in, you know, and I don't know what changed there demographically, and I would just also note that in the Delta, you know, because of the way they messed up the census the last time around, they took the entire Delta out for 4 years. Which had been in there for 40 years, and nothing really changed there, and we were able to prove that to HUD, and then they added it back in. But we were ineligible for the block grant infrastructure. We could use it for the ADA accessibility. I believe there were some narrow categories we could use for that. But I guess my point being is that this block grant pool is $5.7 million, give or take annually, and that there is some flexibility even within those categories, but there's also a distribution either countywide or to district specific areas that we're working on where, you know, those monies are needed. I'm not questioning that, but I want to get a full picture as we're having these conversations, because, you know, I get the sense just from what's presented to us today that there's going to be some differences up here potentially. So, thanks.
And I'd like to just reiterate the fact that this is
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Supervisor Kennedy would like to.
Oh, sorry, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. The one question that I have, I mean, I completely understand my colleagues' questions regarding the distribution. But when we look at things like this slide here, the public services and homeless activities and Meals on Wheels, is that included in those percentages that you showed in an earlier slide?
The earlier slide primarily looked at the projects.
Okay.
As opposed to the number of services that were spread throughout the district and those
I just want to make sure
dollar amounts.
I want to make sure that countywide services aren't weighing on a certain district if that's where their office happens to be. I mean, obviously, Meals on Wheels serves countywide.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
All of our goals as far as the amounts that are available for funding are based on estimates. They're based on estimates because...
Tyrone, if I can just stop you for a minute. Can you go back? There's a confusion, and the supervisors had question on one slide. Go back 2 slides.
There.
That one.
Yes.
Can you explain to the supervisors? The question is this. It says 2020 to 2024,
Yes.
and then you look at the allocated percentage. So the question is that... I want to pick District 1, that's the first one that's up there. It says allocated percentage 0, number of projects 0. are we to read the slide to say from 2020 till 2024 that there will be no allocation to District 1 as we go forward? That's the question.
That's what?
The answer is no. The items, the projects that you see listed in District 2 and 3 are actually projects that were approved in the funding of 2019. And so that's why those projects are present on that chart. The zeros are not an indication that there will not be any projects funded. The zeros are an indication that there's an opportunity for projects to be added. And so that is a part of what this workshop is about and the continuing conversations.
So could I infer from that, I'm sticking with District 1, there's one project we have on there, if the board so approves, $150,000 for Jack Davis. Next time the board will see this, it will have number of projects 1, and whatever the 150 becomes percent allocation, that will get added on. And for this 5-year period, they will see a cumulative going forward to the point that supervisors are asking, then they can see their pop percentage and how the allocation is being done. So this is a cumulative slide as we go
That's
forward.
correct.
I appreciate the clarification. This came up during my my briefing with our CEO. So I'm going to chalk part of this up to the fact that the slide was just poorly conceived because it miscommunicates quite a bit, and it raises concerns from probably all of us. But I guess to the CEO's point, I guess I'm looking for just a first of all, I want to get out of my own way, and that happens on occasion. We get in our own way, but I want to understand. Basically, here's what my district's needs are. I mean, no disrespect to you and the rest of the staff, but we all know our districts better than you ever will. We're elected to know our districts, right? So we work in partnership with you. You guys are the technicians and know where the resources are, but we know our districts. So we know what those needs are. When we meet one-on-one, not in this setting necessarily, I just want simplicity. I want to know what pots of funds, federal or otherwise, are available to the district that, and I also kind of want to know how that fits in with the rest of the county, the rest of the districts. What's available? What are the restrictions on use? And I just want to be able to convey, hey, listen, we need a shade structure at Jack Davis Park. How much of what pots of funds do we have for that are permitted for that purpose? Or I need streetlights in South Oak Park. So I guess maybe I'm just being perhaps over simplistic about it, but that would just kind of help clarify things for me so that I can, go back to I can go back to my constituents and say, hey, listen, you're going to have streetlights in 6 months, or you're going to have the shade structure by the end of the year. And they don't necessarily care about the color of money. They just want their projects completed, and I want to help them complete those projects. So that's kind of the punchline for me from this discussion is I'm looking for a simple way to understand it and then be able to communicate that back to the people who matter most, which are the people that we represent.
That's our goal, and that's why we've instituted this process so that we can clearly hear from you and your constituents through you, and we can assist in, once we are hearing what those potential proposed projects are, then we can go back and look at what are the resources and what are the eligible uses of those funds to be able to complete that. We're in agreement.
No, I appreciate that. Just again, if those same constituents were to tune in and see this slide up there, they may think, "Hey, you have three of the 5 members of the board that are completely sitting on their hands, not doing anything with available resources." So that's the nuance that we're trying to convey here. Supervisor Frost.
I agree with Phil, and I also wanted to ask if you could make it more clear on what funds, what we can do with the money in the agreement cities versus, because some of the cities have different pots of money, and what can we do for them there and versus the unincorporated areas. And what is the timeline on knowing what we want to, on bringing forward projects?
Okay. Well, at the conclusion, I can skip to the slide so I can just answer your question. Because we do have, this is the timeline for where we are. We're having our workshop today. We will go back and from the proposed projects that we hear about from you all today and others that may be discussed in the coming weeks, we will propose an action plan meeting, number 2, that then we will take those projects and look at the cost of those projects and look at the timing of those projects. Is it a project that requires substantial planning? And is that something we want to fund now to kick off the project? Or is it a project that's already underway and just needs additional funding to continue toward completion? But the ultimate goal is to really, by March, to have a community workshop where we've had the representations from you all as well as any other projects and begin the process of narrowing it down. The ultimate goal is that we have approximately, a limited amounts of funds, and we always have an oversubscription. And so there will be a give and take and looking at what can move forward and be spent in a timely manner and something that you're in agreement with as we move forward. So it is a collaborative process.
Does that conclude your questions, Supervisor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Tully?
Yeah, I was going to let Tyrone finish his presentation, and then I have some questions. So I don't know, are you still?
I'd like to proceed from this particular slide where we talk about the 5.7 and all of the categories that are available. I shared that there are different phases of projects. Some projects that start as in design, review, and that's funded, and then it moves into the next phase, which would be bidding and preparation for construction, and the third phase would be construction completion. So each year what we've looked at is what are those projects that are already underway that need to be continued to be funded. And we also look at what are some projects that we may already be aware of that you've identified that are of interest to you. And so at this point, this is a combination of what we've heard and what staff has presented for consideration. It is a potential project list. And so I don't know if you all are aware of these particular projects. Some may be aware, but we want to make it available to everyone to see the projects that are currently on the potential projects list. I'm sure that out of this meeting and workshop, there will be others added to it, and then we'll have to refine how would we fund these projects given the limitations that we have. And then, as I shared, this is our timeline and allocation process for moving forward. At this point, this concludes the presentation, and we would like to move forward into the phase of the workshop that identifies and gets an opportunity for you to share, at this point, any projects that you would like to have considered during this process.
Great. Thank you, Tyrone. Supervisor Tully, then Supervisor Peters.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Tyrone, for your presentation. I guess from the standpoint of this being a workshop, that one of the things that was a little puzzling to me, and Nav and I talked about this a bit yesterday in our briefing and when I briefed with SHRA last week as well, that the scope of what was brought forward from the county's perspective was largely street projects. There's I see a parks project, but it's not. That's not even a local park. That's not a regional park, it's a local park. And when I think about, the communities that, that can qualify for the block grant funding, the Delta and portions of Galt and Rosemont, again, I don't see any of that reflected in what at least county staff brought forward. I do understand the Bing Kong Tong building, which is a museum that's been under restoration. And so I trust that probably came from SHRA staff. But then, what it makes me inquire about, and maybe this is as we look to the process in preparation for this workshop this time next year, is that, you know, and I'll use the parks example. I know Liz is here, but we have a county service area down in the Delta, and we have some very small parks that are under the authority of the county. We have Gene Harvey Community Center, which is a historical building, at least in its vintage, and was full last night for a meeting on the tunnels proposal, and so it's well used. But there are needs. In fact, we did this general services review, and I guess that's why I'm kind of curious too, is that went through and looked at all the facilities. I mentioned this earlier as it related to Mather. We had deficiencies mentioned in 2015, and I know that Nav and Liz are looking at this in the CIP that is still yet non-existent, and maybe when they come with a recommendation this year for parks, or at least funding for the capital improvement program, that that didn't somehow rise up. But why wouldn't we talk with our local folks? We have small rural libraries. We have infrastructure needs, in some cases. And again, I will just say these block grant monies in the Delta over the past 40 plus years have funded, a variety of very essential improvements that have helped maintain the viability and, and the day-to-day life in those communities. I mean, including schools, parks, libraries, water, sewer, street improvements, and such, and support the local fire departments. And so I want to give, kudos certainly to our SHR staff, current and past, for that. But again, in this review, I think if we're going to do some outreach, to the point that was made by the chair, that certainly with each of us, which you do, and again, you do that regularly. I think from the standpoint of county staff, if county staff's going to get the first cut at this, then there needs to probably be some iteration where beyond SHRA interacting with us, that we can sit down with DOT staff, or we can sit down with park staff, which we certainly can do, and say, as you're coming together around this, what is it you're going to suggest that makes the first cut, so to speak? And it's not just about the allocations; it's about the projects. And I think that it's important because maybe there's a long list of projects that didn't make it because of either funding disparities or oversubscription, as you stated, Tyrone. But that's not evident here, and I think that process, as we're kind of refining this, needs to reflect that input either from supervisors or from communities. And so I guess I would suggest that in the future, and then some outreach even to, even though it's an agreement city, in the city of Galt, and city of Alton, and the city of Folsom. I know we've had an interfaith group in Galt that has a food pantry that provides essential foodstuffs, and they're looking to try to have a bigger area to serve the needy down in that part of the county. And there may be a qualifying project, but that didn't make anybody's list, and not because you probably wouldn't have at least considered it, and we still can, but we didn't have an opportunity to reach out. So I don't know, again, I'm not putting this all in SHRA, and I don't know what process we might employ.
I think to answer that question, it's a pretty good point. What we do envision is that when we do come to you, it should be all of us sitting down with you, because you know your community, for you to give us an idea what's out there, and we take that information, we work it, then we come back in the workshop. So your point's well taken. We'll do it. We'll incorporate that. Okay. In the future, we'll look at District 4 and District 5, because you have the three cities in there, the FIG cities. So if you can give us some idea what their needs are, and we can reach out to them too.
Okay. And I think to that point, Nav, and I appreciate the comment that, again, where we either have organized park districts who then, did well in the process last year in the small projects category of this, and we actually have an additional $50,000 plugged in this year. But some of the smaller organizations that competed for that money didn't have the ability to leverage dollars, and so I trust that didn't, their ability. So whether it was a fire district, or in the case of the Walnut Grove Homeowners and Merchants Association, where we had a federally funded block grant project, the lift at the dock is out of service and has been, and they're getting hammered by other state agencies, but they don't have the wherewithal to fix it. So it's it's not. So those are types of things, I think, again, talking with each of us individually, then our districts, but certainly to maybe do a little broader outreach as a part of that, and we can help to districts and park, fire, and maybe libraries as well. We all have libraries in our districts, and again, there are certain areas that would qualify for, some modest improvements to some of those facilities. So, again, I would encourage that. And it sounds like you're already thinking along those lines now.
Yes,
I think
we
that would
are.
be very helpful.
Yep.
And for today's purposes, I guess for the workshop, I've kind of touched on them generally, but there's a variety of things that again are kind of on the smaller end, $100,000 or less, that might very well qualify. That I would suggest that we could take a look at. So I don't know if you want those listed today, or do you want just to submit those to you?
If you could give us the list, that would be great.
All right, very good.
If you can just submit it, or we can just work with the clerk.
Sure.
And
I'll do that. There's not a lengthy list, and I just some of the outreach though too, because as the word gets out there, that I think it'll be important. So okay, thanks.
Supervisor Peters.
I think my question is somewhat similar to what Supervisor Natoli asked, in that when these potential projects come before us, I want to know where you solicited the information from. Is it something you just read in the paper, or have you talked to all the park districts? I'll just talk about my district, all the park districts, to see what they have going. Have you talked to DOT? What other departments within the county might be working on? And I think that would be helpful for all of us to know the kinds of projects in various departments of the county that we have to choose from, because we might know all the projects, but they might not qualify in the low mod areas, may or may not. And then we have so many independent and dependent park districts, that would be a place that should be solicited also. And I would rather, personally, I'd rather talk to staff, county staff, after they've collected those departments within the county and that are dependent or related to the county. So we can then, I can put my thoughts together better. But I do want to add to this list streetlights. We've talked about it a number of times with SHRA in North Highlands and West Arden, or North Arden Arcade, north and west.
Got it, understood.
Supervisor Frost.
I may have more thoughts on this, but just my initial reaction, we talked briefly with you folks in my office, but I'm thinking about some ongoing problems like on Hazel Avenue. There are a couple of people who have, pedestrians who have been killed on Hazel Avenue. It's a real fast street, and there is a plan through the Park District to try to get a pedestrian light. There have been individuals who have requested a stoplight somewhere close across from where the community center is, just to, because there's a park across the street from the community center, and it's dangerous when people are trying to cross Hazel. So that would be something that would come to my mind, and it says here environmental studies, and so my question would be then would it be possible to maybe, I know Citrus Heights may be doing an environmental study with their project with Sunrise Mall. Is there a way to help them with some of the cost associated with that? Or does that qualify under agreement cities, that type of expense?
I think what we'd want to do is to understand kind of what the environmental study would include, and if it's in a low mod area, how that falls into the definition of public service.
But aren't we talking about unincorporated county projects?
Well, we can, you said agreement cities, and
Yes.
so there was
There's
some
only-
funding that could
There are
go
three
to some of the
agreement cities.
cities.
There's only 3 agreement cities: Folsom, Alton, and Galt. Citrus Heights is not an agreement city.
Citrus Heights and Rancho were listed in the staff report under a different type of funding.
We on their behalf, we work with them in administrating certain funds, and so again, that could be the possibility. We'd be happy to investigate that.
But it won't be coming out of this. I think what Tyrone's getting at too, is that it won't be coming out of what money you have here. There's a separate pot of money for Rancho and Citrus
And so
Heights.
that may not be what they want to
Let
do
them
with it.
know that they could
Yeah,
apply.
yeah. There is also been an ongoing request for entry signs into into Orangevale and also Antelope. I don't know if those would qualify, just In fact, Orangevale is actually raising money right now. The community is raising money, trying to figure out how to pay for some nicer entryway signs into their area. And also on Scott Road, there have been, at night, there's no lighting on Scott Road, and there's a couple sharp turns there, and people will run right off the road. And so we were thinking, is there a way to get a stop sign that has some reflectors that would at least warn them you're coming up to something, or some kind of a warning? And there's cost associated with all these things because there's no electricity out there. And so I don't know, we'd need to talk to DOT, but those are some things that come to my mind right now, and I'll try to keep thinking as much as I can before March. Thank you.
Supervisor Peters.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention the food bank on Bell is fairly new and has a lot of expenses coming up. I think that would be good use of money there.
Okay.
And then I'll chime in as well. I note that there is listed here on the potential projects list, street lights or at least the design for street lights for Rio Linda. Rio Linda is represented by both Supervisor Frost and I represent a small easterly portion that's south of Elkhorn, east of 16th, that extends to McClellan Park. That area is, for the most part, void of sidewalks. I'm not suggesting we do sidewalks, but it's an area that tends to encounter a lot of illegal dumping activity, and if we're going to be looking at streetlights in other parts of Rio Linda, at least the design of it, I think we should include that portion which is in District 1 as well. And then the same can be said for that portion of District 1 that extends from the westerly boundary of McClellan to Watt Avenue, south of Elkhorn. I consider that part of North Highlands. That area as well is very subject these days to abandoned vehicles, illegal dumping, and a lot of that is obviously committed at night. And so I think we should be looking at streetlights in that part of the district as well.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Natoli.
Yeah, Tyrone, if you go back to the slide that had the federal programs 2021 activity, yes, that one. Talked to it earlier, but if we could have, or at least this member could have a better understanding then of flexibility, because again, we've made commitments, certainly this board has, and I'll go to Meals on Wheels. That used to be a general funded activity in the past, and SHRA has been a strong partner in this for many years. But I guess my question is, are there other county dollars? Again, they're all called upon, but I don't know if realignment funds, because if health realignment, or if there are other areas, or if this is the only source outside of general fund that we could fund Meals on Wheels. Because, and then my question is that if that money were freed up, could it then go into the public infrastructure? Some of the things we're talking about here. So, again, we haven't had that debate for 10 years. I mean, we've saved Meals on Wheels. So
then also, just to dovetail off of that too, what are the restrictions on supplementation too? Because I noticed that was listed in one of the slides, and so I just want to understand that relative to the answer you're going to give to Supervisor Tully on Meals on Wheels.
Yep. And then it wasn't just Meals on Wheels. Again, that's very valuable. If that's the only way we can fund it, then I'm not, would never deviate on that. But the homeless activities, and I think, the SHRA was called upon to help out Mather Community Campus, if I'm not mistaken. But, is that an ongoing commitment? Is that just for the 2021? Is that something that we have the ability to, because we're putting money into homeless programs from a variety of sources. There are some new sources coming down. Obviously, SHRA is called upon, in multiple occasions to be a partner in funding, but also obviously in programming. And then I guess lastly, just in the area of housing development, preservation, and home ownership, is that prescribed under federal guidelines? And again, obviously those monies are committed. There's, activity in low mod neighborhoods, but whether, again, if we're, looking to these investments that, actually improve the infrastructure that serves those neighborhoods, there's a balance there. And so I guess I just like to have, the ability for this board to have a, certainly an in-depth understanding. You don't need to, have, pages and pages of charts, but I think that would be helpful, Tyrone, because again, what flexibility from a policy perspective, and certainly direction that we've given previously that you're adhering to, is there any ability for us to at least visit that, to talk about it and have a clearer understanding, and whether we were to change anything or not? I'm sure there's some guidelines behind that. But I know in public service, that's capped at 15%, right? Isn't there still a 15% cap?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the only category that is capped.
Okay. Does SHRA provide any other money to Meals on Wheels besides the $489,000?
Well, I know that through our work with the city, we collaborate. So those two entities, jurisdictions funding, allow us to maximize and even leverage to a greater degree. So that's really the primary funding for the Meals on Wheels program at this time.
Right. But there is more money. There is more money coming in from the city side of
yes, and we're able to leverage that to maximize the impact and the number of families that we serve.
When we did this analysis back when Meals on Wheels were switched this way, that's what City of Sacramento was also interested. So that's where the partnership happens with them.
Okay.
Because we did a fairly extensive, as you recall, because of the general fund cuts we were taking, we did not have the ability to absorb it. It was on the cut list, and we were able to come into CDBG and use the money for that.
Because I think at one time we were about for $1.2 million, if I'm not mistaken. It was a big number. Yeah, big number. And so again, I'm not.
This number is fairly pared down from late 2000s.
Okay, all right. Well, that's helpful to know. But anyway, again, as we workshop this, and again, maybe even in advance, there's obviously a lot of questions today, but I think that would be helpful. And again, it's not to skew anything one way or the other, or to deviate from where we're moving in strategies that we've already given direction around, but just to have a clear picture of that as we're having this discussion. So, thanks.
Supervisor Peters?
Sorry, I just wanted to say back to streetlights, since all of us have asked about streetlights, is to remind folks that streetlights are a fundable activity in the new Measure A. So if we could get design money out of this, then we might be able to fund it out of Measure A.
Good point. Okay, thank you. This is designed as a workshop, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
we have workshopped this
Yes,
quite a
we
bit
did.
this morning.
Yeah, thank you for your input. And Supervisor Natoli, you're going to give us your list, right?
Oh, yeah, I will. Yeah. You'll have it.
Thank you. All right, next item, please.
Item 37 is approval of a loan commitment for Sunrise Point Apartments.
Good morning, Christine Weigert with Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. In early 2019, the Board of Supervisors approved allocating $1.3 million in home funds for the construction of Sunrise Point. And just to clarify from the last presentation, well, CDBG funds can only be used in the unincorporated county and the cities of Folsom, Isleton, and Galt. We have an agreement for the home funds that also includes the city of Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova. So, Sunrise Point is being developed in the city of Citrus Heights by Jamboree Housing Corporation and Home Cooperative, and it consists of 47 units. All units have been awarded project-based vouchers and will serve homeless households. In June 2019, the project was awarded approximately $3 million in competitive No Place Like Home funds, and in July 2019, the project applied for 9% tax credits, but was not successful. After discussions with the City of Citrus Heights, SHRA, and the county, the developer is requesting an additional $2,280,000 in home funds, thereby increasing the total home loan to $3,580,000. The additional local funding will increase the local leverage points and greatly increase the project's chances of receiving an award of tax credits. And I should also add that the developer has reduced their developer fee by $400,000, and the project is receiving over $135,000 in fee waivers, all to help ensure the project is successful in their March tax credit application. So given the highly competitive No Place Like Home Fund Awards and the great need for homeless housing, staff is recommending the increased home loan, and the developer's representatives are here, as well as staff, to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. Christine, I noticed that on the Redevelopment Commission, they haven't reviewed this yet, and you were going to notify the board. So why is this before the commission?
They actually did take action last Wednesday. It was just too late to get this report, and they did approve this.
And what was the
It was
answer?
unanimous for all those present.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, I have no one signed up to speak on this item. Is there a motion?
I would like to say I'm excited about this project in Citrus Heights, and I'm excited that we can help them bring this home, and so I'll move approval.
Okay, Chair will second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Great, thank you. Next item, please.
Okay, for item 38, you are acting as the Board of Supervisors and the Sacramento Housing Authority of the County of Sacramento. This is the Saybrook Apartments Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act hearing, approval of a tax-exempt bonds, and funding commitment.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Susan Veazey, Program Manager with SHRA. This morning we are requesting your approval of $2.8 million in a funding commitment comprised of $2.4 million in Community Development Block Grant and $400,000 in Home Investment Partnership Program funds with Jamboree Housing Corporation. In addition, the restructuring of existing debt, $750,000 in affordable housing funds for capitalized operating reserve, and the issuance of up to $23 million in tax-exempt mortgage revenue bonds for Saybrook Apartments, which is located at 4390 47th Avenue in Sacramento County. Saybrook Apartments is an existing permanent supportive multifamily development that was converted from a motel in 2005. Jamboree Housing, the developer, is proposing the acquisition and rehabilitation of the existing residential buildings, which include 60 affordable units, 1 manager unit, and a community center, along with the construction of 27 new units for a total of 88 units in the project. The scope of development includes addressing an underlying moisture issue, constructing a new roof, interior improvements including new kitchen and bathrooms, upgrade of common areas, flooring, heating and cooling equipment, landscaping, and installation of solar voltaic and hot water a solar hot water system. The 27 new construction family units will be in a 3-story tuck-under wood-framed building. Jamboree is an affordable housing developer with 28 years of residential experience, including 91 developments. Property management will be handled by Domus Management Company. Jamboree's Housing with a Heart will provide 15 hours of resident services for all tenants. The special needs population is currently being served and will continue to be served through the continuum of care funded services provided by Lutheran Social Services. And I should mention that the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Commission on February 5th unanimously approved this item. Staff and representatives of Jamboree Housing are available to answer any questions you may have about Saybrook.
Any questions for staff? Okay. No one signed up to speak on this item. Motion?
Staff recommendation. Thank you very much for all your work on this.
It's been moved by Supervisor Kennedy and seconded by Supervisor Frost. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Supervisor, we're prepared to speak to item 3.
Terrific.
Okay.
Who's gonna?
We'll start off with Cindy,
Okay.
and Edwards is here as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I have pulled the information that I'd like to share from the annual housing inventory account, which inventories all of the shelters, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing for families and for individuals. And I've tabulated that by percentage. So if I could show this. And this is published on the HUD website. It's actually the housing inventory account, not account. You can see from this that while about 20% of the population, according to the point in time, is in families with children, the percentage of beds or units dedicated to families is much greater than that. And this was actually pointed out to me. So 439 family beds, 944 total, 47%. I'm not going to go through it all. I think the question was primarily around sheltering. Between the emergency shelter and transitional housing, which is both of limited term, it's about 46% of the inventory is dedicated to families. Now, while that may still not be adequate in every case for individuals, for family households, it does show that this community has prioritized family beds, family transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and rapid rehousing. The DHA, Department of Human Assistance, does a lot of work with families, basically owns the family system. So I'm going to call Ann Edwards up here to speak about some changes there and what's happening in that program. And then Lisa Bates is also here from Sacramento Steps Forward that can talk about the flexibility that was mentioned earlier with their HAP funds and how it will also assist in resolving homelessness for families.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning. Ann Edwards, Department of Human Assistance. As Cindy said, we do a lot of work with families in our CalWorks program. We have temporary assistance for CalWorks families and lots of support, but the biggest support we have really is the Housing Support Program, which offers rental subsidies, help with move-in, vouchers when someone's waiting for a placement. And I just wanted to give you some data on those we have served in this fiscal year 1920. 415 families are being served in the HSP program, and that's both continuing families and new families. The total number of families that have been housed in this current fiscal year is 167. And the number of families, this is an unduplicated number, who have received rental subsidies in this fiscal year is 378 families. So we are serving a lot of families in these programs. Our 18-19 allocation for the Housing Support Program was $2.8 million. We got an increase this year, and our allocation is now $3.9 million, so we're able to serve more families using this funding source. There's also been several legislative changes that have increased our ability to support homeless families. You used to get homeless assistance if you were on CalWorks once in a lifetime. That is now changed to once every 12 months. So if families unfortunately sometimes rotate in and out of homelessness, we can help them every year. We also have a new homeless assistant benefit for CalWorks people who, CalWorks beneficiaries who are fleeing domestic violence. They have some expanded support. The temporary homeless assistance for families, which is really motel vouchers, that we increased to $85 a day. It was $65 a day. And then you get an extra $15 a day for each additional family member over 4. So there's lots of things going on in the CalWorks program to very specifically help families. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Supervisor Tully.
Yeah, thanks, Ann, and thanks, Cindy, for following up to the questions earlier this morning. But so let's just use a case in point here that was highlighted in the article. And again, I understood from the article, if you read through it, that there was going to be some CalWorks at the end of the discussion. But how is it somebody that has a toddler and a 3-year-old and is vouchered in for a couple of days and then goes back to their car and then waits for CalWorks? Why? How does that make sense, recognizing there's tremendous demand out there, that we wouldn't voucher that mother and her 2 children in until we got the CalWorks issue addressed, which sounded like it was going to provide some hope. But it sounded like there was just kind of this ping pong. And to me, that's, again, it's only one, and again, I'm, not being critical as much as I'm just, if that's the situations we're faced with, then I guess it cries out to me that there's a gap. Potentially, and maybe there is, and maybe that's just the fact of life. And again, the numbers again are real people, real families, and again, those are important numbers. But so, Ann, maybe you can help. Again, that was the one that made the headlines over the weekend, but I'm sure there's lots of other ones that didn't. And we're working with a whole lot of folks, but I need to understand, I guess.
So without knowing the specifics of that case, and I don't, or off the top of my head, when a family comes to our attention and there are young children in the home, we jump through hoops and bend over backwards to get that family sheltered, whatever it takes. And so somehow that family appears to have slipped through the cracks, which is wildly inappropriate and unfortunate. I'm glad to know that they are now hooked up with CalWorks, and so we will be able to support them in both shelter and housing. But when it comes to our attention, my staff do everything humanly possible to get a family with children sheltered.
Right, no, your staff, again, this is not being critical, it's just that highlighted for me, and I'm sure for a whole lot of folks that read it, because, and again, really didn't, I don't think it portrayed a bad light relative to people working to serve, but again, it was a point in time, and then, she'd been vouchered in, and then she's back in the car. And it's like, and then talked about CalWorks, and then she was hopeful the next week, which would have been, I guess, late last week, early this week, that there was going to be some additional help. So again, I don't. Maybe if nothing else, it's an example of where if we've got young children in particular, but children of any age, and a mother, and one of the things that she pointed out that she didn't have addiction, and so this kind of. But she was hesitant to go into a shelter where a lower barrier might present itself, and again, she obviously had to make that assessment for the safety of herself and her children, whatever was real or perceived. But again, my question today was because it kind of spoke out to me that there were families that certainly were being unserved, and I guess with the count, we found more in cars than we had previously because of the way we conducted the point-in-time count, which again is more accurate. But if we have, again, women with children in particular, but it could be a father with children, that to me that's, those are, they really draw on, I think, our need to do everything we can, and I trust we are, so.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions for staff? Thank you, Ann.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I just may tie this off, we wanted to demonstrate all the various efforts we have for our families. It's clearly a priority, but when you take into account everything that's going on and the percentages that were in our point-in-time count, you can see why the community recommended what they did for the funding, this one-time funding that we have. So we took that into account, and we'd ask for your support.
Understood. Thank you. I know Supervisor Natoli is in the queue here to speak and perhaps make a motion, but I just want to use the opportunity, since generally we're on the subject of what this county continues to do in light of the crisis for our constituents or who are unsheltered in this county. I just think we can constantly do a better job of explaining what we're doing. I know that in this county, much of what we do tends to be overshadowed by what others are doing, which, that's fine. It's not a pride of ownership thing. It's the fact that it should be an education opportunity for those in the media, the public in general, about what Sacramento County's continuum of care infrastructure is all about, and how we're not just helping families, but certainly individuals that are struggling with homelessness. And I'm talking about everything from our behavioral health programs, our mental health programs, as well as our sheltering efforts and initiatives, and what we're working with on and through with SHRA and the City of Sacramento and others. I just think we can constantly improve on messaging. So,
yes.
Right. Supervisor Tully?
Yeah, just one question on a different aspect of this. We had a meeting yesterday with a party who may be pursuing a motel conversion and looking at the opportunity to provide some housing. Does this, Bruce, you were in the meeting, and thank you for attending, because the application has to go in, would it provide, assuming other pieces were to come together, for the senior, which is called out here, I guess $200,000 additional for elderly homeless. Do we have the flexibility within this framework to then look at that as being a possibility for some assistance? Because that was part of the meeting yesterday, is that this conversion of very small units that would probably be, acceptable for, a single person. And again, with the focus on seniors that we've now, kind of shifted towards, at least in part, do we have the flexibility within the framework of this?
Well, yeah, I'd ask Cindy to speak to this too, but I think we also have to bear in mind, Supervisor, this is one-time funding that we have here. And that really, I think, leads to an additional question of whether that's appropriate source for that
Okay.
project.
Well, again, one-time funding, but one-time funding for, it can be used support services, right? This is not necessarily capital improvement, or is it?
This money can go to capital in some circumstances where you have to provide additional information. We would ask and need to have the understanding of the complete project, how it would be funded, and of course, any new project would have to be RFP'd. So given the one-time nature of the money, and it is relatively small, given that we have invested in activities with HEAP that we do not want to lose by mid-year next year, which we would without additional, extension, we felt this was the best use of that money. I know there are maybe other opportunities for new shelter, new housing, but given the time frame, which was announced, basically, we started working on this in December. We wanted to have projects ready to go, and we certainly don't want to lose something we've already done. So that's why we're geared primarily on continuing those shelter investments that we've already made, doing rehousing investments. As you said, the new funding is for senior prevention, and then, of course, doing our youth investments.
So when we say senior prevention, what's that mean?
We, as you recall, SB2 also earmarked about $300,000. That is a program we have yet to scope. So while the Adult Protective Services is operating the home safe prevention services, we would build off that, but look to have a broader access, because there are many seniors that are experiencing homelessness outside of APS. So we have yet to develop what that exactly looks like, and that program would come back to the board.
Okay, so very quickly then, but you just talked about coupling the dollars that would be in here, the $200,000, give or take, here, and the $300,000, but you talked about the urgency to spend the money or lose it. So how soon are you going to get back to us on that?
That SB2, I think, is around mid-year. I'm not sure of the timing of that, but we'll work as expeditiously as we can to develop that program. We do now have the home safe money going, so if we do have prevention dollars for seniors right now. And we also, I should note, the seniors are really a big part of the scattered site sheltering. A large percentage of that is occupied by seniors.
So the HAP money, which we're talking about here, then you've got a plan to spend it right now? Is that?
No, the staff report outlines that we do want to spend it more quickly than 5 years, because it's not very much money, and the administration is, we have to consider the administration. So we are looking at funding this between 2020 to 2023 at the very latest. We can modify this. This is not something set in concrete.
Well, I guess I would just ask, Mr. Chair, on the senior piece of this, again, recognize what you just said, and certainly it's consistent with what we've heard in the last few months on this, is that could we have a kind of a comprehensive approach as to how these dollars could go together, and then, fund either ongoing and or if there's going to be some capital improvements for a property that would then house seniors more permanently, or through transition. Kind of have a picture of that so we can, see the various sources of funding. Obviously, you're familiar with them, Cindy, but I think that would be helpful, Bruce and Cindy, to have. So at some future juncture, in a not too distant future, have a report back to the board and maybe have a further discussion around that. Okay, thanks. I would move the staff recommendation.
Okay, it's been moved by Supervisor Toiser, second by Supervisor Kennedy. I know Supervisor Peters has a question or a comment before we vote.
We could probably vote anyway. But okay, I'll take my time here. So, I'm glad to have this chart out of the HUD document, so thank you for that. But it leads me back to something I've been trying to get for some time, and that is when we're out in the community, our constituents want to know how many people we're helping and how many people in what kinds of programs. And I would like to see us, I don't know if it could be quarterly, get a chart like this of how many people we're helping in what programs. So, and how much money we're spending in the homeless programs too, because people want to know that, and it's very hard for us to piece it together here with all the different homeless reports that come in. I also, just before I finish, I want to say on the getting the word out, if we had that kind of report, given that this is the most residents think this is most important issue facing government. I think that maybe on our website and in the quarterly newsletter that goes out from the county, there ought to be, a corner for homelessness. You're concerned about homelessness, as a title or something like that, and then give these statistics. So, because some people read the paper and they think that only the city of Sacramento, because that's all that's reported, that they're the only ones working on this issue, and then they get it mixed up. So I think it would help us clarify what we're doing and the money we're spending. Then also we could say is, okay, we're spending all this money. Is this what we want to spend it on? Because I think many of us are thinking that drugs and mental health are a larger issue, if not at least as important an issue here as housing. But the public is interested in both of those. So I think we need some kind of regular reporting with numbers in it.
Great.
So I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, very good. Before we continue with the balance of our agenda, I do have one off-agenda speaker, and I thank her for her patience. So, Melissa Thorne.
Thank you very much for letting us speak today. My name is Melissa Thorne. I'm from Downey Brand, and I'm here representing Silva Ranch and Mr. Gary Silva. And I'm here today to express some frustration that Silva Ranch is having with county staff. For 20 years, Silva Ranch has been taking green material and recycling that as a soil amendment on their property. And this property's out towards Ione, where the soil quality is pretty poor naturally. So for the last few years, Mr. Silva has been negotiating with a number of agencies for a waiver of the state's 12-inch limit of depth to try to build a good ground of soil to support forage plants that then they graze cows on. And Mr. Silva had to deal with the Regional Water Quality Control Board for the Central Valley region, the Department of Food and Agriculture, and the county LEA, and finally was able to come away with requirements that satisfied all of them, that addressed all of the issues that they had, and was able to continue with this beneficial soil amendment process. But last year in September, we received a letter from the planning department mandating a conditional use permit or requiring an appeal. So Mr. Silva paid the several $1,000s to appeal because he believes that this is an ag use and it doesn't require a conditional use permit. The problem with these appeals is it's heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and it doesn't come back to you all to hear what the result was. If it's an adverse ruling and it's appealed from that point, it has to go to court. So we're trying to avoid that endpoint. So we sent a letter to this board on January 20th requesting a confirmation that the beneficial reuse of processed green materials by application to marginal soils is not an unpermitted use, and it should not require a use permit and regulation as a green waste facility. This is not a green waste facility. They're land applying green material in compliance with state and local laws, and additional land use regulation is not necessary. And we are even concerned that it could be deemed spot zoning, which is not lawful. Under Table 3.2 of the zoning code and the general agricultural uses, one of those listed is cultivation of soil. And this is consistent with the state's California Healthy Soils Action Plan, which encourages sequestering of green materials in soils for climate change and also to improve soils and ag production. And it also helps the county by diverting from the limited landfill space that otherwise green materials would go to if there was no beneficial reuse for them. So what we're asking is clarification from this board that the application of green material for soil cultivation and soil improvement is a primary agricultural use and that no conditional use permit is required.
Great, thank you.
you.
Supervisor Tully?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, understanding that obviously we can't take action on this item, but certainly today, the letter, familiar with it, and I actually had a meeting with Lisa Travis and the planning director, and I know there was a meeting to occur. I guess that occurred today. Lisa spoke to you a few moments ago. I've spoken with Mr. Siegelkopf and Mr. Silva both. I think that one of the things I would just point out to the point made here, again, recognizing we can't take action on it, but today, is that there's no way to have this matter actually come to the board, whether on appeal, or I guess the only way would be have a discussion around the zoning code and how we would see that fitting. I know, Lisa, you and your office pledged to take a look at that, and that was the last message I left Mr. Siegelkopf. Apparently that hasn't produced any different outcome as it relates to, and maybe you can assist here.
Right. So the meeting that we had, I think, was followed up with a meeting just today with planning staff and the Silva Ranch representatives. Our office has not had a chance to formally analyze and respond to that letter, but that will be forthcoming. And I don't obviously know what the answer to those questions are yet, but we will be addressing what Ms. Thorm raises in her letter that she just referenced.
So I guess the question I would just pose, Mr. Chair, is that recognizing that council will take a look at that. Obviously, Ms. Thorne is very capable of representing Silva's in their farming operation. Is that I think the question is posed in the letter and so forth, and we'll have to wait the response from council. But recognizing the structure of our zoning code and how matters get appealed, I would just say that for something of this nature, and it's probably not the it doesn't just impact one operation, obviously it does in this case, is that I think it's an important enough policy and certainly, direction by this board, working with our planning department and with council and anybody else involved, I think would be useful. And again, we can't necessarily interrupt any process that's currently in the zoning code, but I guess I would just say I find it problematic that folks can never get to their elected officials on a matter of import. On this, they can go to the planning commission through our designated authority, and then they got to go off to court if they're not happy with that. And it just seems to me that that's problematic from a number of different perspectives. And again, we authorize the zoning code, so I guess I'm going to ask as a part of this that we take a look at, as it relates to those types of matters, about the ability for people to actually to appeal to the elected members of this board that represent the people of this county, separate and apart from this matter. But my question to Lisa lastly is then, when do you anticipate a response from your office, Lisa?
I think we can get that within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so I think that's...
I know we had discussed possibly having a follow-up meeting,
Okay.
which we would be amenable to as well.
Okay, all right. So that's about as far as we can go today with this matter,
Understood.
not being on the agenda. But so with that commitment, then we'll wait the response, and then we can do a follow-on meeting with obviously Mr. Siegelkopf, Ms. Thorne, and Mr. Silva, anybody else, and see if we can resolve it. If not, I'm going to ask that we, I'll place on the agenda properly that we actually have the ability for people to appeal to this board on certain matters. We put a scope to that, but I think it's important. So.
Great. Thank you. And
Thank you very much.
I would just note too that our planning director is in the audience expressly to hear for herself some of the grievance that's been expressed here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Melissa.
All right. Next item, please.
Item 39 are your nominations. You are continuing to, do you need a minute to get your note? Okay. You are continuing to February 25th, the Children's Coalition, Cordova Community Planning Advisory Council, Sacramento County Youth Commission. Continuing to March 10th, the County Service Area 4B Slough House, Wilton, Casumnes Equal Employment Opportunity Advisory Committee. Continuing to March 24th, the Carmichael Old Foothill Farms Community Planning Advisory Council, Casumnes Area Community Planning Advisory Council, Delta Citizens Municipal Advisory Council, Elk Grove Casumnes Cemetery District, Human Services Coordinating Council, In-Home Supportive Services Advisory Committee, Local Child Care Planning and Development Council, Maternal Child and Adolescent Health Advisory Board, North Highlands Foothill Farms Community Planning Advisory Council, Sacramento County Alcohol and Drug Advisory Board, and the Vineyard Area Community Planning Advisory Council. The Disability Advisory Commission, Supervisor Cerna.
Chiefs are recommending continuing the item until March 24th.
Okay. Fair Oaks Cemetery District, Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Pete Schroeder for the Cemetery District.
Okay. Fair Oaks Community Planning Advisory Council.
Please continue to March 10th.
Okay. Mission Oaks Recreation and Park District.
Please continue to February 25th.
Orangeville Community Planning Advisory Council, Supervisor Frost.
I'd like to nominate George Lowry.
Okay. Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Commission, Supervisor Kennedy. Okay, and that concludes your nominations.
Okay. Next item, please.
Do we have county executive comments?
No comment.
Okay.
Supervisor comments.
And then supervisor comments. Any comments from my colleagues? If not, I do have a concern I want to express publicly to our CEO. It's a concern that I've now received a few emails on in the last week or so from some of my constituents that live along the Garden Highway. And this is the portion of the Garden Highway where it principally intersects with Powerline Road. We're receiving concerns, complaints about Amazon truck traffic, both vans and semis. And as we both know, both Powerline and Garden Highway are very narrow, very limited shoulder county roadways. In our response back, the response that I and my staff have collaborated on to express back to these concerned constituents. We're letting them know certainly that we have an overpass that's under construction that's due to hopefully open at the end of the calendar year, and that will be the permanent relief that they will be able to enjoy from some of that truck traffic. But I'd like our county CEO working with his appropriate executive team to look at what could be done in the interim in the next few months to work with Amazon to see if we can't minimize the amount of truck traffic that is impacting those very, very narrow county roads. It's an obvious danger, and as we continue to receive correspondence from concerned residents, I want to be able to communicate back to them that our staff is on top of this.
Got it.
Great. Okay. We do not have a closed session today.
No, we do not.
All right. So if there's no further business in front of this board, we are adjourned.